Chapter 157. Yu Qianqiu floated in the air on his sword with a ruthless look on his face. Cold lights and shadows were everywhere around him, dancing all over the sky. When Yu Qianqiu moved in the air, there were nearly 100 cold lights following him. Every time his limbs moved, the sword shadows in the sky would be in a commotion. Everything was under his control, and his momentum was extraordinary. Feng Xiangtian, who was in the attic, suddenly narrowed his eyes and said, "If I remember correctly, there seems to be a set of sword skills in the Sutra's depository called Guyuan sword skill. The higher the cultivation, the more flying swords you can control. Yu Qianqiu should be practicing this set of sword skills." Osihai, who was beside him, nodded, then shook his head and said, "The Guyuan sword skill doesn't seem to be so fast and powerful. Otherwise, many disciples would have practiced it." Feng Xiangtian's eyes flashed, and he said in a low voice, "I'm afraid it has been modified by him. If that's the case, then this Yu Qianqiu's cultivation talent is really extraordinary." Osihai frowned and did not say anything. He did not believe what the head said. Modified the cultivation method? What a joke. The person who was most familiar with the cultivation method was the creator of the method. How could other people who practiced this method change it randomly? Unless he was not afraid of death or qigong deviation. In fact, both Feng Xiangtian and Osihai were right. However, the latter did not know that when Yu Qianqiu was modifying this sword technique, there were indeed many times when he almost went berserk. However, whenever his body was damaged or about to collapse, the golden bead in his body would display its miraculous effect, constantly repairing and maintaining his body. That was why Yu Qianqiu, who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, changed the sword technique of Guyuan into his own unique sword technique. As for his talent in cultivation, it probably had nothing to do with it. All the people who were familiar with Yu Qianqiu were stunned. They did not know how many more secrets this guy had. In short, once he did it, it was very eye-catching. Just when everyone was guessing what he was going to do, Yu Qianqiu stretched out 2 fingers and drew 2 circles in the air. Close to 100 flying swords followed his gestures and split into 2, forming 2 circles of swords behind him. In the eyes of the surrounding people, it was as if he had grown a pair of glowing wings on his back. The disciple hiding in the Vajra barrier panicked once more. Although the astral breaker talismans did not harm him, the explosion had caused his blood and qi to churn, making him feel unbearably uncomfortable. It took him a long time to calm down, but from the looks of it, the fellow in the sky was going to do something again. It was a matter of life and death, so it would be strange if he was not afraid. The light barrier protecting him became golden again. "Quick!" Yu Qianqiu shouted at the 2 circles of swords behind him. One of the 2 circles of swords behind him suddenly broke off, forming 2 long dragons on the left and right, pouncing toward the golden egg below. Immediately, a series of clanking sounds of metal colliding rang out. As the clanking sounds rang out, Yu Qianqiu moved his fingers again. The 2 sword dragons once again formed 2 circles, connecting with each other in a circulatory cycle manner. They kept colliding with the golden egg, and the rapid and sharp sounds of collision rang out. This scene fell into the eyes of the crowd, as if the 2 wings on Yu Qianqiu's body had grown onto the golden egg below. Suddenly, Yu Qianqiu moved his fingers and pointed down. The 2 high-speed circles of swords immediately sped up, turning into 2 beams of light. The sounds of collision were no longer rapid, but a continuous, sharp, ear-piercing sound. After listening for a while, the crowd felt a sense of irritation in their chests. They felt flustered, and immediately circulated their qi to resist. Yu Qianqiu looked down with a determined expression. He took out a handful of qi recovery pills and stuffed them into his mouth. "Damn it! I'm going to drag it out with you today. I don't believe that this turtle shell can protect you forever." Everyone could see that he wanted to fight a protracted battle, but the noise was really disturbing and uncomfortable. What they didn't know was that the disciple in the light barrier was suffering 1,000 times more than the crowd. The sharp, bone-piercing sound was right beside his ears. He couldn't hide even if he wanted to. He could only sit down cross-legged and circulate his qi to resist. Elder Imo of the Artifact Refining Pavilion, who was on the pavilion, asked in surprise, "Old Guan, What is your disciple doing? Guan Weiwu turned around and rolled his eyes at him. He thought to himself, you're asking me, but who am I supposed to ask? After a while, Elder Emo suddenly shouted, oh no, look at the disciple in the Vajra barrier. The people on the pavilion looked over. It was so far away that they couldn't see clearly. They immediately circulated their chi to take a closer look. When they saw clearly, they were all shocked. The disciple's face was pale, and his body was trembling non-stop. His eyes, mouth, nose, ears, and other orifices were bleeding. His appearance was dispirited and miserable. It was obvious that he was injured. How could this be? Feng Xiangtian was also shocked. The group of elders looked at each other in dismay. Even with their cultivation and knowledge, no one could tell how Yu Qianqiu had injured that disciple. In fact, Yu Qianqiu himself didn't know what was going on. He was the closest to the disciple, so he was the first to notice the abnormality. At first, he saw that the disciple was shivering in the turtle shell. He didn't pay much attention to it. When he noticed that something was wrong, he focused and saw that the disciple was bleeding from his orifices. What was going on? After a while, Yu Qianqiu came to a realization. It was probably the high-intensity noise he made that injured the disciple. No matter what, he was someone who had lived in the technological era for so many years in his previous life. Of course, he knew that the sound waves produced by noise could also kill people. Damn! It was a lucky hit. So it was like this. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. The speed of the flying sword was raised to the limit. The ear-piercing sound made the people around them feel disturbed. Yu Qianqiu stared at the disciple's reaction in the turtle shell. When he saw that the disciple was shaking even more violently, he knew that he had guessed correctly. He stuffed another chi recovery pill into his mouth and thought, bastard, let's see how long you can resist. Not long after, everyone suddenly noticed that the light emitted by the Vajra shield was flickering. Even the disciples in the early stage of foundation establishment could see that something was wrong. Yu Qianqiu sneered again and again. He could clearly see that the person inside was not only bleeding from his 7 orifices, but even his pores were oozing blood. Yet he was still stubbornly resisting. It seemed that he was not far from death. Everyone in the attic naturally saw this. Elder Emo sighed and said, I'm afraid it's almost over. Everyone had their own thoughts and were silent. Only Osihai's face was frighteningly gloomy. Suddenly the surroundings boiled. The Vajra shield on the cultivation pavilion disciple's body suddenly disappeared. His whole body was finally exposed. He was covered in blood and fell to the ground. Bang! Yu Qianqiu's face was full of joy as he shouted. After waiting for a long time, he finally succeeded. If he didn't act now, then when would he? He understood the principle of delay. Nearly 100 cold lights swarmed toward the disciple like a flock of crows fighting for food. Now everyone knew that the disciple was dead for sure. Osihai, who was in the attic, slammed his palm on the railing. His lips were tightly shut, and his face was gloomy. He didn't say a word. Feng Xiangtian glanced at him, and didn't say anything. On the other hand, Guan Weiwu was a bit like a thief. His disciple defeated his opponent, but he didn't show any joy. Instead, he secretly looked at the people on both sides. With a burst of blood mist, the flying swords completed their mission. They turned into cold lights, and flashed back into Yu Qianqiu's storage pouch. When the blood mist dissipated, there was nothing left except a pool of blood on the ground. Yu Qianqiu floated to the ground. The long sword under his feet fell into his hand. He walked to the pool of blood, picked up the bloody bracelet with his sword, and put it into his storage pouch. He casually threw the sword back into the scabbard on his back, and walked toward the alchemy pavilion disciples, as if nothing had happened. Chapter 158. Silence. The surroundings were very quiet. Everyone was still immersed in the moment when the flying sword dismembered the body. No one could have imagined that a flying sword could be used to such a bloody extent that not even a piece of flesh or bone could be found. The most frightening thing was that with Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, he was actually able to break the middle-grade defensive magic treasure, the Vajra bracelet. No one could see how he did it. In any case, the person inside was killed by him just like that. The first to wake up were the supervising elders. Because Yu Qianqiu's matches were too eye-catching, There were still a few matches that hadn't been decided and had already stopped. At this moment, under the reprimand of the elders, the matches continued. However, no one dared to kill each other anymore. Yu Qianqiu's previous actions were already very clear. Those who wanted to kill him had better not meet him, or else the consequences would be very tragic. Lu Guang and that disciple were in stark contrast. The former was unharmed while the latter's bones couldn't even be found. This competition was decided by drawing lots. Who could guarantee that they wouldn't meet Yu Qianqiu? Who still thought that they could beat Yu Qianqiu with their late core formation cultivation? In the end, the remaining people competed peacefully. After the winners and losers were decided, nothing happened. The spectators, on the other hand, felt that it wasn't intense enough and lacked interest. After the match was over, someone immediately came to the competition venue to repair the ground that had been smashed. The atmosphere over at the cultivation pavilion was oppressive. The disciples who were about to compete were all secretly thinking about who would be unlucky enough to meet Yu Qianqiu. Those who had killed in the previous 2 matches were even more nervous. Xiao Wanqing, who was on the 10,000 Fragrance Gardens side, felt that something was wrong. She didn't say anything and smiled like a flower. Her eyes flickered as she looked at the disciple who had just won. Her expression was worth thinking about. In reality, she wasn't the only one looking over. There were too many disciples from each faction to count. It was just that their gazes were different from hers. The disciples of the Alchemy Pavilion all looked as if they were on steroids. They stood there in high spirits, as if they were afraid that others wouldn't know they were disciples of the Alchemy Pavilion. Yang Qian grinned and said, "Yu Qianqiu, you sure hit it well. What? Are you going to defeat all the disciples of the Cultivation Pavilion?" Hearing this, the nearby disciples all gathered their heads, wanting to hear how Elder Guan's direct disciple would answer. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said modestly, "Martial Uncle Yang thinks too highly of me. I was just lucky just now." The Cultivation Pavilion is filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. It's already not bad if I can enter the top 10. Heh, Martial Uncle Yu is too modest. That's right. Martial Uncle, don't stand on ceremony when the time comes. When it's time to strike, strike. This Martial Uncle Yu was usually very amiable and did not put on any airs. At this moment, the disciples from the Alchemy Pavilion were laughing and fanning the flames, causing the disciples from the other factions to be filled with envy. Disciples participating in the 4th round draw lots. Dongfang Chang'eo shouted. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands at the crowd, and as usual, walked over leisurely. Many of the disciples sighed in their hearts. Looking at how calm he was, it seemed he already had a card up his sleeve. This was the demeanor of an expert. This was the demeanor of a master. After 3 rounds of the competition, those who relied on luck or coincidence were almost all eliminated. The remaining people were definitely late core formation stage experts. Yu Qianqiu looked at the remaining 100 people and was slightly stunned. He found that they were all standing next to the lottery box and looking at him, not knowing what to do. While Yu Qianqiu was confused, Dongfang Chang'eo looked at the disciples in front of him and said in a low voice, "Yu Qianqiu, come here and draw lots." Oh. Yu Qianqiu quickly ran over. No matter what the reason was, he had already offended the old guy, so he couldn't do it again. Just as his hand was about to reach into the lottery box, someone suddenly shouted from upstairs, "Wait, Chang'eo, bring Yu Qianqiu up here." The 2 people who were called looked up and saw it was the sect leader Feng Xiangtian. Yu Qianqiu was stunned again and then followed Dongfang Chang'eo into the Cultivation Pavilion's main hall. When he climbed to the top floor, he saw the sect leader and the other elders and quickly bowed. In his heart, he was trying to figure out why he was called up. All the old guy's attention was on Yu Qianqiu. Feng Xiangtian gently waved his hand and said, "Chang'eo, pass on my decree. Yu Qianqiu is directly promoted to the top 10 of the core formation stage. He doesn't need to participate in the rest of the competition. The others can continue to compete. You can go down first." Dongfang Chang'eo paused. This was completely against the rules of the competition, but since the sect leader said it was a decree, there was no problem. He immediately clasped his hands and said, "Yes, sect leader." Then he left. What are these old guys doing? While Yu Qianqiu was puzzled, Dongfang Chang, Ao's voice came from below. Pass on the sect leader's decree. Yu Qianqiu is directly promoted to the top 10 of the core formation stage. He doesn't need to participate in the rest of the competition. The others can continue to draw lots. At first, there was an uproar outside, but then it quieted down. Everyone thought about it and agreed. With Yu Qianqiu's strength, it wouldn't be a problem for him to enter the top 10. To put it bluntly, there was no one left who could deal with his pile of flying swords. The remaining disciples were relieved when they heard this. Without that guy, it would be much safer. However, he didn't know that sect head Feng Xiangtian had other considerations. The Pavilion of Cultivation had been the foundation of supporting Immortal Island for thousands of years. If they continued to compete, and were defeated by Yu Qianqiu along the way, then they would be in big trouble. The Pavilion of Cultivation would lose all of its face. Therefore, he decided to not let him compete in the later rounds, and use his authority as the sect head to let him directly enter the top 10. The group of old guys knew that after watching 2 rounds, none of the Cultivation Pavilion's core formation stage disciples were Yu Qianqiu's opponent. They naturally knew the sect leader's intention. Feng Xiangtian looked at Yu Qianqiu and smiled. Yu Qianqiu, don't think too much. I will ask you a few questions, and you have to answer me honestly. Can you do that? Yu Qianqiu's brain turned a few times. He bowed and said, since the sect leader is asking, I will tell you everything I know. Very good. Feng Xiangtian nodded and smiled. Then let me ask you. The sword technique you practice is very powerful. What is it called? Where did it come from? Yu Qianqiu had thought of these questions a long time ago. Since he took it out to show off, he knew that this day would come sooner or later, so he was well prepared to deal with it. He replied respectfully, the sword technique I practice comes from the Sutra Pavilion. It is called the Guthuan sword technique, but... He paused and continued, but during the process of practicing, I found that there were some flaws in this technique. Therefore, I spent a lot of effort to improve it. I don't know if it is still the Guthuan sword technique. He wasn't clear about these things, and didn't know what the consequences of saying these things would be. Everyone immediately gasped. This kid really changed the sword technique to practice. Such talent. Even those who have reached the final stage of the passing calamity stage wouldn't dare to casually change a technique to practice. Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. The Guan clan has produced another talent. Guan Weiwu and Ferdinand looked at each other with indescribable feelings. Feng Xiangtian smiled and revealed an as expected expression. He continued to ask, how many flying swords can you control now? Where did these flying swords of yours come from? I have already reached the limit of flying swords I can control today. There are a total of 100 flying swords. As for the flying swords, I practiced the sword technique to a certain stage, and didn't have any more flying swords to use, so I almost gave up on practicing this sword technique. In the end, I used up the 1,000 upper spiritual stones that the sect leader gave me. The flying swords were bought by senior brother Cheng Gingqing from the Secular Objects Hall. Yu Qianqiu looked like he had no choice but to do so. I see. Feng Xiangtian nodded and glanced at Guan Weiwu expressionlessly. He was furious. Yu Qianqiu started with alchemy, and reached the early stage of the core formation stage, in just a few years. Now he even created his own cultivation technique. Such talent was rare in the cultivation world. This muddle-headed master didn't know anything. Because he didn't have any flying swords to use, he almost forced me to give up on studying this sword technique. If I really gave up, who would see such a powerful sword technique on Fuxian Island today? This muddle-headed thing. Elder Mo, Yu Qianqiu can go to the Equipment Refining Pavilion to get the magic tools he lacks for cultivation in the future. Try to cooperate if you can. Feng Xiangtian's voice was a little gloomy. Chapter 159. Yes, sect leader. After Elder Mo responded, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, it's a pity to stay in the Elixir Refinery Pavilion with such cultivation talent. It's better to transfer you to the Cultivation Pavilion. Yu Qianqiu didn't know how to answer this question, so he obediently pretended not to hear it. Oh Sihai, who originally had a gloomy expression, raised his eyebrows inadvertently. He looked up and down at Yu Qianqiu and thought to himself, "That's right. Why didn't I think of it? With such cultivation talent, he should come to my cultivation pavilion. Isn't hiding in the elixir refinery pavilion a waste of talent? Besides, it's not shameful for a disciple to compete with another disciple." Osihai's expression relaxed, and he started to have ideas about Yu Qianqiu. "We all saw that disciple die under your sword just now. However, before the Vajra shield broke, that disciple had already bled to death. What magic art did you use?" Feng Xiangtian asked again. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and smiled. "I didn't use any magic art. He died from being noisy." "Noisy to death? Are you kidding me?" The group of old guys exchanged glances. "Nonsense," Osihai said coldly. "Sigh. A bunch of illiterates." Seeing that they didn't believe him, Yu Qianqiu bowed to Osihai and said, "If Elder O doesn't believe me, would you like to accompany me to do an experiment? Elder O will understand once you try." "How do I do it?" Osihai took a few steps forward. There was a large bell, hanging low on the top floor of the cultivation pavilion. Yu Qianqiu saw it when he came up. He walked in front of the bell, and shook the baton to hit the bell. Dong! A dull and distant sound came from the top of the building. Everyone downstairs looked up, not knowing what was going on up there. Yu Qianqiu pointed to the bell with a little embarrassment and said, "Elder O, can you bend down and stand in the bell for a while?" Without saying a word, Osihai bent down and stood in the bell shouting, "You try, Dong." Before he finished speaking, the bell had been rung by Yu Qianqiu. From the bottom of the bell, Osihai's body could be seen trembling. After the buzzing sound stopped, Yu Qianqiu said with respect, "Elder O, you can come out now." After waiting for a while, Osihai came out with a strange look on his face. He hadn't prepared anything just now, so he was immediately shocked by the sound of the bell. "Elder O, what's wrong with you?" everyone asked when they saw his strange expression. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed in his heart. The old man must be suffering. Osihai shook his head and said dully, "It was so loud. I wasn't prepared and almost fainted." Guan Weiwu walked to the front of the bell and knocked it twice. He said hesitantly, "The sound is indeed loud, but it shouldn't be enough to make people faint. Old Phil, I'll go in and try. You knock it and see." After that he also went in. Ferdinand rolled his eyes and walked over angrily. He shook the pestle and hit it hard. Plop! Guan Weiwu sat on the ground, covered his ears with his hands and rolled out. He climbed up shakily, but he was still a little unsteady. After a long time, he calmed down and exhaled. So powerful. At this time, everyone knew that what Yu Qianqiu said was true, but they still didn't understand the reason. After all, they and Yu Qianqiu's ideas were completely different, so it was understandable. Feng Xiangtian pondered and said, "Yu Qianqiu, do you mean that the disciple died because of your noise?" "Yes," Yu Qianqiu said respectfully. "That disciple was hiding inside the Vajra barrier. I used my flying swords to continuously attack it. The sound he heard inside was 1,000 times louder than what we heard outside. After a while, no one would be able to endure it. Naturally, he was shaken to death." Yu Qianqiu had originally wanted to explain to them what noise and sound waves were. But after thinking about it, he figured that they wouldn't understand. So he didn't say anything. It was enough to let them understand the general meaning, so that they wouldn't be long-winded. Everyone looked at each other. It was the first time they knew that sound could kill. Feng Xiangtian nodded and said, "Yu Qianqiu, why do you want to participate in this competition?" Yu Qianqiu said respectfully, "I want to go out and broaden my horizons. Then you should know that the outside is not like the inside of Fuxian Island. There are dangers at all times. Aren't you afraid?" Feng Xiangtian said, "How can I see the rainbow without going through wind and rain? I'm not afraid." Yu Qianqiu replied solemnly. The group of old guys nodded. Feng Xiangtian smiled and said, "How can I see the rainbow without going through wind and rain?" "Well said, he. Yu Qianqiu, you can leave first." Yu Qianqiu bowed to everyone and was about to leave. Osihai said, "Yu Qianqiu, the Vajra bracelet belongs to a disciple of the cultivation pavilion. It should be taken back. Seeing that you are going out to gain experience, The cultivation pavilion will give it to you to protect yourself." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He thanked him and left. The group of elders stared at Osihai strangely. Elder Emo said, "Elder O, when did you become so generous?" Osihai glared at him and ignored him. He followed the sect leader to stand in front of the railing to watch the competition below. Feng Xiangtian looked at Yu Qianqiu walking away and sighed. Through this conversation, he was very fond of Yu Qianqiu. At such a young age, with such talent, his future was limitless. Unfortunately, he was not his own personal disciple. Thinking of this, he glanced at Guan Weiwu and sighed in his heart. Since the following competition had nothing to do with him, Yu Qianqiu was too lazy to watch anymore. He said goodbye to the disciples of the Alchemy Pavilion and left the Cultivation Pavilion's territory. He flew straight to the Alchemy Pavilion on his sword. When the other disciples of the Alchemy Pavilion saw that Yu Qianqiu had left, they also felt that there was no point in the competition and left. The disciples of each faction also came for Yu Qianqiu. When the main character left, they all left one after another. The entire square was suddenly left with the Cultivation Pavilion performing a one-man show. The group of old guys in the Alchemy Pavilion finally understood who the main character of this competition was. In the following days, Yu Qianqiu did not watch any of the finals and nascent soul stage competitions. He did what he was supposed to do. He did not know that his name had once again spread throughout supporting Xian Island, causing a group of Qi condensation stage disciples who had no chance to watch the competition to be filled with regret. They often pestered the seniors who had watched the competition to talk about it. As for the so-called seniors of the various lineages, they were filled with admiration for Yu Qianqiu. When they spoke, they couldn't help but add oil and vinegar. As a result, a climax of learning from Yu Qianqiu was set off in supporting Immortal Island. In particular, when it was said that Yu Qianqiu cultivated the Guyuan sword technique of the Sutra Pavilion, a group of Qi condensation stage disciples were amazed. It turned out that supporting Xian Island had such a powerful sword technique. They immediately set their cultivation goal on the Guyuan sword technique after they reached the foundation establishment stage. The Sutra Pavilion was also very lively these days. Some foundation establishment stage disciples all went to study the Guyuan sword technique. As a result, a scene that had not been seen on supporting Xian Island for thousands of years appeared. There were tens of thousands of disciples on supporting Xian Island. Because there was only one sword technique, and it could not be taken out, those who came could only memorize it. As a result, countless foundation establishment stage disciples lined up in the Sutra Pavilion. Some people saw that the scene was so lively, and they were afraid that they would not be able to line up. They even brought food to line up overnight. Of course, some people with higher cultivation levels also came. Everyone had seen the competition that day, so they naturally wanted to see what was so special about the Guyuan sword technique. It actually allowed Yu Qianqiu to kill disciples with higher cultivation levels than him. It was really worth learning from. Chapter 160. A few days later, the results of the competition were out. 5 nascent soul stage disciples and 10 core formation stage disciples were confirmed. Yu Qianqiu got what he wanted, so he was naturally one of them. Furong knew that Yu Qianqiu was going to leave tomorrow, so she spent the entire day in Alchemy Pavilion, Yu Qianqiu's exclusive courtyard. The two of them were about to part, so it was inevitable that they would say some sweet nothings. The stone table in the courtyard was filled with food. Naturally, it was brought by a certain someone. Furong sat on the side with an unhappy expression. She pouted and said, "What am I going to do if you leave? If I had known earlier, I would have gone to participate in the competition." Knowing that she didn't want to part with him, Yu Qianqiu smiled but didn't say anything. He thought, if you want to participate in the competition, your old man won't agree even if you beat him to death. In this shitty sect, killing people doesn't even happen in the blink of an eye. It's as normal as eating a damn meal. AI. This girl, after her face was healed, she was clearly more cheerful than before. She also talked more. Unfortunately, her personality was still a bit introverted, but that was also good. She was so beautiful. If she was too extroverted, she would definitely make him wear a green hat. She was a beauty. It was like this. If you didn't provoke others, there would be others who would provoke you. Qianqiu, you're the most resourceful. Think of a way to bring me out as well. Furong's smile was like a flower. She got up and picked up the wine pot, pouring wine for Yu Qianqiu and flattering him. Yu Qianqiu was pestered by her for a long time. It really was a bit of a headache. His eyes turned and he suddenly stared at Furong's chest. What's wrong? Furong saw that his gaze was strange. She also looked at her chest, but didn't find anything abnormal. It could be seen that Furong was already used to his actions. Yu Qianqiu shook his head solemnly and said, "That's not right. It seems to be a lot bigger than last time. What's going on?" "Really?" Furong suspiciously looked at her chest. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of Yu Qianqiu's snickering. She immediately understood that he was teasing her again. Blushing, she threw the wine cup in her hand at him. Yu Qianqiu dodged to the side and grabbed her wrist, pulling her into his arms. He chuckled and said, "Look at you, a girl. How can you touch a man in broad daylight? Aren't you afraid of being seen by others?" Furong herself didn't know what was going on, but every time she was pulled into his embrace, she would feel as if her whole body had lost all its strength. He struggled weakly and said, "Who told you to always bully me?" "Nonsense, why would I bully you? If I say it's big, then it's big. You don't believe me? I'll bring you in for a checkup right now." Yu Qianqiu abruptly picked her up and walked into the room, causing Hibiscus to cry out in alarm again. "Quack! Scream! Scream! I'm the only one living here. Even if you shout yourself hoarse, no one will know." Not long after, the sound of two people fighting came from the room again. The two of them were lying on the bed with their clothes disheveled. Yu Qianqiu's fingers had already felt a moist spot. He wanted to explore it again, but the beauty beside him said no. Immediately, his fingers were clamped by the elastic thighs. Yu Qianqiu groaned in infinite sorrow. He pulled out his sinful hand and cursed in his heart. "Damn it! These days where I can see and touch but not eat are too torturous. Lousy, sex is emptiness, emptiness is sex. Ba. I'll endure. Endure. Endure." The two of them lazily hugged each other. Furong suddenly asked, "When will you come back?" Yu Qianqiu answered half-dead, "I don't know. I probably won't be back for a while." The two of them sank into silence again. The soft hand on Yu Qianqiu's chest suddenly rose up. She grabbed his trembling hand and pressed it on her plump breasts. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He turned his head and smiled bitterly. "I say, little sister. Big brother, I have already endured very hard. Don't seduce me anymore." Furong let out an almost inaudible sound. She whimpered, "I'll give it to you." "What did you say?" Yu Qianqiu sat up. His eyes swept back and forth across that alluring body. He said very seriously, "I'm very pure. It's very easy for me to believe other people's words. You must not speak carelessly. The God is watching. Repeat what you said just now. I didn't hear it clearly." Furong's face flushed red. She didn't dare to repeat it. She turned her graceful body to the side and didn't say another word. Yu Qianqiu laughed mischievously. He leaned over to her ear and asked, "You're not afraid anymore?" Furong softly replied, "N.G.A.G.A." Yu Qianqiu looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. "Cake seller. Long live Chairman Mao." Then he pounced on her as if he was starving. The spring night was bitter and short. The sun rose high in the sky. The hibiscus bloomed to express the feelings of spring. It was a splendid night. Only the two people in the room knew about it. Yu Qianqiu looked down at Furong's smooth and tender body. In his previous life he walked among flowers. He had plucked countless flowers. He was very experienced. But in this life he was still a virgin. He didn't expect Furong to take advantage of this era's essence. It wasn't easy. While she was sleeping soundly, Yu Qianqiu quietly got up and put on his clothes. Just as he turned around, he saw a pair of extremely bashful big eyes looking at him. He couldn't help but smile awkwardly. "You're awake?" He hated the sadness of parting. He wanted to sneak away. "Are you leaving?" "I'll send you." Furong picked up a piece of clothing to cover her chest. Suddenly she frowned. Biting her lips, she stubbornly got off the bed and put on her clothes. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the bed that was dotted with red spots. Then he looked at Furong's strange walking posture. He thought to himself, "Oh no, it was Furong's first night yesterday. I was a little too indulgent." He couldn't help but smile bitterly. "How are you going to send me off like this? Aren't you afraid that others will see through you?" "No, After walking a few steps, she also realized that something was wrong. She couldn't say the rest of her words. Yu Qianqiu walked downstairs to stop her. He gently whispered in her ear, "Be obedient. There's no need to send me off. I just want to tell you that I will always think of you. You just wait for me in Wanfen Garden. You have to work hard to cultivate. Do you understand?" "Yes." Furong nodded, feeling wronged. Yu Qianqiu gently pushed her away. He opened the door and flew straight to Penglai Pavilion on his sword. He faintly heard the sound of crying. In front of Penglai Pavilion, 5 nascent soul stage disciples and 10 core formation stage disciples led by Elder Quan of the Cultivation Pavilion were ready to leave. There were many onlookers. Yu Qianqiu saw his master Guan Weiwu waving at him from the crowd. He couldn't help but feel touched. This muddle-headed master actually remembered that he was leaving today. It was really rare. Thus, he happily ran over and bowed, saying, "Disciple will be leaving now. Master, please take care." I know. Guan Weiwu scratched his head and suddenly said with a voice transmission, "The leader, Quan Deming, is my junior brother. I have already told him that if you have any trouble, you can look for him. He will help you." Yu Qianqiu thanked him and returned to the group. Suddenly, he heard another voice transmission, "Humph. Furong didn't return last night. Did she spend the night at your place?" "Damn." It was father-in-law Fei's voice. Yu Qianqiu looked around and found Ferdinand, who was glaring at him in the crowd. He was stunned. He had already slept with his daughter. What else could he say? Yu Qianqiu bowed respectfully. After talking with the sect leader, Quan Deming and Elder Quan returned to the front of the group. He glanced at everyone and shouted in a deep voice, "Let's go!" With that, he took the lead and flew away on his sword. Swoosh swoosh. 15 flying swords shot out and 15 figures quickly followed. Below, countless people showed envious eyes. The wind whistled in Yu Qianqiu's ears. He slightly slowed down and looked back in the direction of the alchemy pavilion. He didn't know if that woman was still crying in his room. He felt guilty and exhaled. He suddenly turned back, and his sword turned into a stream of light. He quickly chased after the group in front of him. Chapter 161. No one knew when the original Cultivation Alliance was from. To put it bluntly, it was just something with an undeserved reputation. This time it was different. Ong Kwangsung caused a series of troubles. In the end, everyone had to clean up after him. Even Fuxian Island was not at ease. In view of this, the major sects finally made up their minds to enrich the Cultivation Alliance and make it work. They could not always make everyone suffer because of one sect. There must be justice for everything. This was the purpose of the Cultivation Alliance. Of course, the so-called Cultivation Alliance was something created by the righteous sections. It had nothing to do with the demonic sections. There were probably hundreds of righteous sects in the entire Huaxia Empire. There were major sects like Fuxian Island that had tens of thousands of disciples. There were also small sects that only had one disciple. These small sects even had only one disciple. After discussion, the Cultivation Alliance would be managed by the top 10 sections. The executive director would be changed every year, and the top 10 sects would take turns taking charge. The purpose was naturally to ensure the so-called fairness. The first year was this year, starting from Fuxian Island. As for sects other than the top 10 sects, those who were willing to join the Cultivation Alliance would more or less send someone to be responsible for the liaison work. The top 10 sects would still play the leading role. In fact, there were many small sects that were unwilling to join. For them, the disadvantages were greater than the advantages. Not to mention the constraints. The small sects would not dare to cause trouble and ask the Cultivation Alliance to uphold justice. Who would be like Ong Kwangsung and run to provoke the demonic sect's evil blood devil palace? Wouldn't that be courting death? But they had to join. The top 10 sects issued a declaration. Any decent sects that did not join the Cultivation Alliance would have to pray for their own good if they encountered any trouble in the future. This meant that if they did not join, they would not be able to do anything alone. It would be very eye-catching and easy to be bullied. There would not even be anyone to help them. However, the top 10 sects did not blindly bully the small sections. For example, the Cultivation Alliance's normal operating expenses were completely shared by the top 10 sections. They would not let the small sects pay a single cent. The only requirement was that anyone who joined must obey the decisions made by the Cultivation Alliance. Otherwise, the consequences would be severe. For the sake of fairness, the Cultivation Alliance was not placed in any of the righteous sections. The 10 major sects jointly invested in a building in the 100 Flowers Valley, a place that was neither righteous nor demonic, to serve as the organization's headquarters. Yu Qianqiu and the others did not know about this at first. When they followed Quan Deming to the 100 Flowers Valley, Yu Qianqiu was shocked. Why was the Cultivation Alliance here? Thinking about it, he felt relieved. It was probably only here that no one would have any objections. Otherwise, no one would feel at ease putting it in anyone's home. He didn't know what to do if he bumped into Yan Zixiao again. This was something that Yu Qianqiu was a little worried about. After all, he had taken advantage of her, and it wasn't just 1 or 2 meals. He didn't even let go of her curvy body parts. It would be awkward to see him again. As the saying goes, what you fear will happen. As soon as they entered the 100 Flowers Valley, although the palace master of the 100 Flowers Valley didn't come personally, she sent a son, a daughter, and a group of disciples to welcome the guests. Everyone was in the cultivation world. Although supporting Immortal Island only had a dozen or so people, they represented a sect. Therefore, they still had to show the necessary etiquette. As soon as they entered the valley, they saw an extraordinary young man and a beautiful woman standing at the city gate. Both of them cupped their fists and bowed to Quan Deming. Yan Zhuixing, Yan Zixia, I represent my mother to welcome the seniors from supporting Immortal Island. Quan Deming smiled and greeted them politely. He didn't dare to put on airs of the world's #1 sect in front of them. Others might not know, but how could he not know? The so-called mother was his senior sister, the daughter of his master's previous sect master, Guan Dinghai. As soon as Yu Qianqiu entered the city, he noticed Yan Zixia. Fortunately, he had always liked to keep a low profile. When he entered, he stood at the back. When the situation turned bad, he immediately hid behind everyone. He didn't know if the other party saw him or not. The people from supporting Immortal Island and the people who came to welcome them walked in. There were many people watching. They were all individual cultivators, both righteous and demonic. The righteous and demonic path in the 100 Flowers Valley were free to come and go. Everyone was here to watch. After all, supporting Immortal Island was famous. They weren't like other sects who often had people outside. It was rare for supporting Immortal Island to send a group of people. It was inevitable that they wanted to see the glory of the world's #1 sect. The place where the 100 Flowers Palace welcomed supporting Immortal Island was at the 100 Flowers House. It wasn't the first time Yu Qianqiu had been here. When they arrived at the entrance of the 100 Flowers House, the people from the other sects of the Cultivation Alliance had already arrived. There were hundreds of people waiting there. The leaders of the sects all came to say a few words to Quan Deming. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the crowd. There were quite a few familiar faces. He seemed to have seen the leader of the Moon Clan when he was in the Demon region. The few female disciples behind him were also very familiar. The leader of Ong Kwangsung was actually Lu Wanwan, an old acquaintance. The person behind him was even more familiar. It was Lu Zhenguang, whom he had once stripped naked. Damn! This was going to be interesting. What day was it today? What a sin! Yu Qianqiu groaned in pain. His body shrank in the crowd. There was a saying that went, "You can hide now, but you can't hide forever." He was so big, and supporting Immortal Island was so eye-catching. Where could he hide? There was another saying that went even better. Women are more careful than men. This was even more true. A female disciple of the Moon Clan glanced over and was stunned. Then, she whispered something in the elder's ear. The elder of the Moon Clan's eyes lit up. He looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding behind the crowd sneakily. The elder of the Moon Clan, Hua Rui, suddenly chuckled and said, "Elder Quan, I heard that your outstanding disciple Yu Qianqiu is also here. Who is it? Can I have a look?" Yu Qianqiu is here? Elder Quan. We have to ask him to come and see. The Daoyuo sect was also in an uproar. In the eyes of the other sects, they were a little surprised to see such a scene. Who was this Yu Qianqiu? He was so famous that even the first and second sects of the orthodox sects were so eager to see him. Of course, they didn't know that the trial in the demon region was a secret between the top 3 sects of the orthodox and devil sections. Ang Kuangsung's Lu Wanwan and Lu Zhengguang exchanged a look. They were both confused. The name Yu Qianqiu was so familiar. Yan Zixia, who was standing at the entrance of the 100 Flowers house, looked around the crowd of Fuxian Island and finally saw the familiar figure hiding behind the crowd. Yu Qianqiu, come out and greet the seniors of the various sections. Quan Deming smiled and turned around. Bitch, I'll sell you to Africa. Would it kill you to speak less? Yu Qianqiu hated him to death. There were too many people. To prevent him from squeezing out, the disciples of Fuxian Island automatically made way for him, revealing his true appearance. He had no choice. He would be killed no matter what he did. Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly at the crowd and walked over. Lu Wanqian and Lu Zhengguang were shocked at the same time. There were many people with the same name and surname in this world. But if they had the same name and surname, and also had the same appearance, then they could only be the same person. Moreover, Yu Qianqiu's name was rarely seen. The other Ang Kuangsung disciples also looked at Yu Qianqiu in shock. Lu Zhengguang, who was still in shock, wanted to step out and question them. However, he was stopped by Lu Wanwan the moment he took a step out. Lu Wanwan shook his head gently and winked at the people of supporting Immortal Island, hinting him not to be rash. Lu Zhengguang looked at the people of the world's #1 sect and held back the impulse in his heart. He had no choice but to hold back. He heard that the people of Fuxian Island were all extraordinary. The elder in charge was at the tribulation stage, and there were 5 late-stage nascent soul cultivators. On his side, the elder in charge was only at the mid-stage nascent soul realm. Although there were 5 nascent soul realm elders, they couldn't defeat them. This was the difference between the world's #1 and #5. The difference was huge. Chapter 162. Yu Qianqiu was most concerned about Ang Kuangsung's group. Their actions were all seen by him. It seemed that Fuxian Island's name was really famous. Just their signboard alone was enough to intimidate people. The corner of his mouth curled up into a smile. He already had an idea in his mind, so he immediately felt relaxed. Fuxian Island's core formation stage disciple, Yu Qianqiu, greets seniors. Yu Qianqiu smiled and cupped his hands at the people around him. Hua Rui giggled and said, "You are Yu Qianqiu? The last time I saw you, you were only at the foundation establishment stage, right? How long has it been? You have already broken through to the core formation stage. You are indeed an outstanding disciple of Fuxian Island." The Luo sect's principal elder was called Zhu Xianxian. Although he didn't go to the demon ghost region, he had heard of Yu Qianqiu. He immediately walked over with a smile and grabbed Yu Qianqiu's arm. He patted it and said, "You are indeed extraordinary, extraordinary. Haha. Senior, you flatter me." Yu Qianqiu took this opportunity to quietly withdraw his hand. He did not have a good impression of the Deluo sect, and sooner or later, he would come looking for them to settle the score. As a man, there was no justice in not taking revenge. Everyone saw that the 3 sects were speaking in riddles. They didn't know what was so good about Yu Qianqiu. While they were wondering, Yu Qianqiu walked toward Ang Kuangsung with a smile. "Lu Wanqian, Lu Zhengguang, long time no see. How have you been?" Yu Qianqiu stood in front of the two. His smile gradually turned into a sneer. The originally lively surroundings suddenly became silent. Anyone could see that Yu Qianqiu and Ang Kuangsung had a grudge. Otherwise, he wouldn't have called him by his name in public. Yan Zixia frowned. She had carefully investigated Yu Qianqiu's background, and naturally knew that Yu Qianqiu used to be Ang Kuangsung's disciple. Now that he had joined another sect, it was taboo in the cultivation world. Why did he provoke him instead of hiding from Ang Kuangsung? Quan Deming was astonished as well. How did Yu Qianqiu get involved with the Blue Light School? He hoped that nothing bad would happen to him. Before this brat even arrived, many people had already greeted him and asked him to watch out for him. Guan Weiwu, Ferdinand o Sihai Feng Xiangtian, Guandinghai, and the old consecrator Majiogu. Each of them had a higher rank than the other. Lu Wanqian's expression changed. He also didn't know what Yu Qianqiu was up to, but he definitely didn't want to have any conflict with supporting Immortal Island. If it wasn't for supporting Immortal Island, Ong Kwangsung would have already been eliminated by the Blood Demon Palace. He put on a smile and said, "This little brother from supporting Immortal Island is called Yu Qianqiu, right? I don't think we know you." Hearing his words, Yan Zixia was stunned. Her brother Yan Zhuixing's eyes flickered as he glanced at the crowd. No one knew what he was thinking. "Yo, Elder Lu, you are really forgetful. I almost died in your hands back then. Have you forgotten so quickly?" "No. I'm afraid you think I'm already dead." Yu Qianqiu's tone was strange and aggressive. "Humph. I've never seen you before." Lu Wanqian ignored him and cupped his hands at Quan Deming. "Elder Quan, what is the meaning of this? Are you trying to bully us?" Looking at Lu Wanqian's secretive behavior, the people around them didn't say anything and just watched the show. However, Ong Kwangsung was embarrassed. No matter what, it was a big sect in the cultivation world. Yet it was being pressured by a little disciple from supporting Immortal Island. Lu Zhenguang glared at him and trembled with anger. With his status in Ong Kwangsung, he had never been humiliated like this in public. Quan Deming stroked his beard and pondered. Yu Qianqiu said that he almost died in his hands back then. It seemed like they were enemies of life and death. This matter was a little troublesome. Yu Qianqiu wasn't an ordinary disciple. After thinking about it, he shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, don't mess around." Yu Qianqiu choked with anger. He paused and bowed to Quan Deming. "Yes, Elder." When he turned around and saw Lu Zhenguang, he couldn't help but mock him. "You look like you want to bite me. Clean face and no beard. Who doesn't know that you were castrated by the demonic path? The whole Ong Kwangsung almost brought the destruction of the sect because of you. Why are you here pretending to be a pretty boy? Humph." The crowd was in an uproar. Not many people knew that Lu Zhenguang was castrated. When Yu Qianqiu revealed it, it was a little shocking. Everyone knew his status in Ong Kwangsung. If that was the case, there was a reason why Ong Kwangsung went against the demonic path. The world's #1 sect was indeed the #1 sect. They even knew such a secret. Those sects who had participated in the demon-slaying conference organized by Ong Kwangsung immediately understood everything. Ong Kwangsung used the name of demon-slaying conference to take advantage of everyone for revenge. Those sects had more or less suffered great losses. Some sects were even directly destroyed by the demonic path. In an instant, countless hateful eyes stared at Ong Kwangsung and the others. "Stop right there." Lu Zhenguang was about to go crazy. With such a secret exposed, even a man wouldn't be able to withstand it. He immediately rushed out and was about to fight Yu Qianqiu. The two of them were very close to each other. Before anyone could react, Lu Zhenguang and Yu Qianqiu had already engaged in close combat. The former punched the latter's head. Yu Qianqiu turned around and grabbed his arm with a backhand. With the other hand, he punched his face twice quickly. Then he grabbed the back of his neck and raised his knee to hit him twice. Finally, he pushed his hand away and raised his leg high, sending Lu Zhenguang flying. Fortunately, there were many people behind him. Ong Kwangsung's disciples had already caught him. However, his whole face had already become a bloody mess and he was unconscious. In fact, Yu Qianqiu had seen through Lu Zhenguang's cultivation at a glance. He was only at the late stage of foundation establishment. Therefore, he deliberately provoked him. He wanted him to make the first move and then find an excuse to beat him up. Who knew that this silly bird would be so angry that he actually wanted to have a one-on-one fight with him? Wasn't this courting death? One had to know that Yu Qianqiu had mingled in the underworld in his previous life. His position as the boss was obtained through punches and kicks. There was no need to mention his one-on-one experience. It wasn't a problem for him to fight several people at once. How could this Ong Kwangsung's eldest young master be his opponent? In the end, in just a few moves, while everyone was still in a daze, Lu Zhenguang had already been sent flying by a kick. People in the cultivation world were used to fighting with cultivation and spells. How many people would fight like this? Yu Qianqiu's movements were as smooth as flowing water. He was too skilled. He was simply too handsome. Everyone was dumbfounded. This Yu Qianqiu was worthy of being an outstanding disciple of supporting Immortal Island. He could even fight hand to hand. He was indeed not bad. The disciples of supporting Immortal Island were even more impressed. This Yu Qianqiu shocked everyone with just one move. He really made supporting Immortal Island proud. Actually, as a man, it was not bad to show off his masculine charm occasionally, especially when it came to fists and kicks. It was very lethal to women. For example, Yan Zixia and the female disciples of the Moon Clan were all amazed. "Little bastard, you actually dared to hit me. Do you want to die?" There were many unreasonable things in the world. It was not the first time that the villain first complained. For example, between the one who hit and the one who was hit, Yu Qianqiu shouted coldly and wanted to rush over to beat him up again. Ong Kwangsung and the others weren't useless. The grandson of the sect leader was beaten up because he didn't react in time. Now that he was beaten up again, he wouldn't be able to show his face in public anymore. Immediately, a few people drew their swords and pointed them at Yu Qianqiu. Hey, this time, supporting Immortal Island didn't want to be outdone. A few people flashed over and stood in front of Yu Qianqiu, pointing their swords at him. Chapter 163. How dare they make a move on the disciples of supporting Xian Island? The 5 nascent soul late-stage disciples looked at each other coldly with disdain. This was what the world's #1 sect was proud of. It immediately put a lot of pressure on Ong Kwangsung and the others. Once they made a move, they didn't even need to think about the consequences. Although the disciples of supporting Xian Island had a cruel competition on the island, they were able to stand out and come here. Naturally, they understood the mission they had to shoulder. How could they tarnish the reputation of supporting Xian Island when they were united against outsiders? Lu Wanqian held the unconscious Lu Zhenguang, whose face was covered with blood, and said angrily, "Elder Quan, don't go too far with your supporting Xian Island." Quan Deming also felt that it was a little unreasonable to continue making trouble. On the first day of the Cultivation Alliance's operation, such a thing happened. If this matter was blown up, he wouldn't be able to explain himself when he returned. He immediately shouted in a deep voice, "All of you come back! Elder Quan, he was the one who hit me first. We can't let him go so easily." Yu Qianqiu pointed at the unconscious Lu Zhenguang and said, "It seemed like he wouldn't let him go unless he killed him." "You shut up." Quan Deming was really having a headache. No matter where this kid went, he seemed to be doing some soul-stirring things, but he couldn't do anything to him. Seeing that Quan Deming was angry, Yu Qianqiu and the 5 nascent soul stage disciples returned behind him. Quan Deming cupped his hands at Lu Wanqian and said, "Elder Lu, it's our supporting Xian Island's lack of discipline. I hope you can give me face and let this matter go. Don't take it to heart." Lu Wanqian's face was gloomy. He snorted coldly and didn't say anything. It was really hard for him to say anything. Although it was the other party's disciple who started it, it was his own disciple who made the first move. However, no matter what, his strength was still inferior to the other party. Otherwise, how could he let it go? The cultivation world had always been one where the strong would not yield to the weak. Also, Quan Deming had personally apologized. They had to give him face. Yan Zhuixing, who was at the entrance of 100 Flowers' house, saw that the situation had calmed down. He waved his hand, and a few people went over to Ong Kwangsung's side to carry the unconscious Lu Zhenguang for treatment. At the same time, Ong Kwangsung sent 2 disciples to follow. If someone were to question why the members of the Flower Palace didn't come out and reconcile when the matter had just occurred, then why would they not? That would truly be wronging them. As long as they didn't offend them, the Flower Palace would never participate in the disputes of any sect. This was the foundation of the Flower Palace's foothold in the cultivation world. After this incident, Yu Qianqiu became famous in the cultivation world. From today onwards, the news of supporting Immortal Island's disciple Yu Qianqiu beating up on Kwangsung's sect master's grandson spread throughout the cultivation world. Yan Zhuixing acted as if he had never seen what had just happened. He smiled and cupped his hands at everyone. The Flower Palace has prepared wine in the backyard of 100 Flowers' house, to welcome our esteemed guests who have come from afar. Please." The sects thanked him. Under the guidance of the Flower Palace's disciples, they passed through the hall and arrived at the backyard of 100 Flowers' house. A banquet had already been prepared. The fine wine was accompanied by the fragrance of flowers. It was indeed worthy of the Flower Palace's name. The principal elders of the 10 major sects were arranged to sit at a table. 9 of them were smiling. Only Lu Wanwan didn't look good. Anyone who encountered such an incident would be in a bad mood. The disciples of the other sects found their seats and sat down. Yu Qianqiu and the other 9 core formation stage disciples of his sect sat at a table. Yan Zhuixing, who was greeting the guests, glanced over and was slightly stunned. He turned around thoughtfully and continued to greet the guests. A small detail caught his attention. When Yu Qianqiu and the others sat at a table, the other 9 people seemed to be waiting for Yu Qianqiu. After Yu Qianqiu sat down, the other 9 people sat down as well. It wasn't easy to tell that they weren't paying attention. Although the palace lord of the Flower Palace didn't come personally, she didn't slack in her etiquette. The 2 siblings personally toasted each table. When it came to Yu Qianqiu's table, Yu Qianqiu quickly glanced at Yan Zixia and saw that she was completely unperturbed, so he simply acted as if nothing had happened. The fact that Yan Zixia was cultivating on supporting Immortal Island was something that very few people in the entire island knew about. Aside from Yu Qianqiu, even Quan Deming didn't know about it. Naturally, no one else knew about it. During the meal, the hosts warmly welcomed them and exchanged toasts. The atmosphere was good, although many people had reached the stage of fasting and didn't need to eat anything, relying on the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to maintain their vitality. As long as they were human, they couldn't avoid following the ancient rules. After all, they weren't immortals. After the banquet, everyone came to a rather remote place in the 100-Flower Valley after eating and drinking to their heart's content. There was a large house that stood there. On the main door, there was a jade plaque with the words Cultivation Alliance carved on it. The inside had obviously been renovated. There were many small courtyards. After the sects had allocated their residences, their respective elders gathered together and went to the Flower Palace to greet the palace lord to thank her for her hospitality. If it was someone else, they wouldn't have to do this. The 10 major sects were already giving them face by eating. But what kind of background did the Flower Palace have? Everyone knew that this was a place that both the orthodox and demonic sects had to give face to. Moreover, they were going to be in someone else's territory in the future. How could they not greet the palace lord? However, if it wasn't for Yu Qianqiu and the other disciples, what was the point? It wasn't like they were going to steal someone else's territory. They didn't have the qualifications to meet the palace lord. After Quan Deming left, a nascent soul disciple named Cui Siping took care of the group from supporting Immortal Island. Yu Qianqiu wandered around the garden twice and was really bored. He found Cui Siping and asked for leave. He wanted to go to the 100 Flowers Valley for a walk, but Cui Siping said no. The core formation disciples were afraid of him, but Cui Siping, who was in the late nascent soul stage, didn't care about him. Yu Qianqiu couldn't do anything even if he ran into a wall, so he could only accompany everyone in the garden and count their hairs. After waiting for half a day, Quan Deming finally returned. Yu Qianqiu was happy that he could finally ask for leave and go for a walk. Unexpectedly, he threw out a large pile of jade tablets and asked everyone to inject a wisp of true origin into it. Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. There were hundreds of jade archives, and he needed to inject a wisp of true origin into each one. That was quite a lot. At his level of cultivation, it wasn't easy to refine spiritual qi into a wisp of true origin that he could skillfully control. Everyone's expressions changed. How much spiritual qi did he need to absorb to recover after using up so much true origin? The higher one's cultivation, the more spiritual qi he needed to recover. This wasn't something that was used up in a fight. Taking a few qi replenishing pills would just take some time to recover. Instead, it was something that was completely cut off from the dantian. It was like a withered seedling of rice that could grow with a little water. But if you uprooted the seedling, it would be useless no matter how much water you fed it. Yu Qianqiu was considered lucky. He had enough spirit stones to support him, but it was really difficult to refine true origin to the point where he could skillfully control it. Otherwise, with so many top-grade spirit stones, his cultivation would have been blown to the end of the tribulation passing stage long ago. Why would he still be in the core formation stage? The group of people formed a circle. With Quan Deming in the lead, they passed the tablets one by one and took turns inputting them. After a round, the tablets returned to his hands. The sky had already darkened. He took the tablets and went out again, instructing everyone not to go out. Actually, there was no need for him to instruct them. Everyone's spirits were already low. A few to the east, and a few to the west sat cross-legged in the garden. Each of them took out a vitality pill and prepared to replenish their spiritual chi. Suddenly, everyone felt the garden brighten. They looked towards the source of the light. They saw a faint layer of white light enveloping Yu Qianqiu's hand. In his palm was a handful of vitality pills. There were probably more than 10 of them. Just from the appearance of the pills, it was obvious that they were much better than the pills everyone else was using. Everyone sighed inwardly. As expected of the Alchemy Pavilion's principal elder's direct disciple, even the pills he took were rarely seen by ordinary disciples. It was no wonder his cultivation improved so quickly. While everyone was feeling envious, they suddenly saw Yu Qianqiu staring at the pills in his palm. He sighed and muttered, "Damn it. I hate eating this thing the most. I don't even know how much I've eaten these past few years. AI." As he said that, he frowned and swallowed a few mouthfuls of pills. Then he took out another handful and swallowed it. He hadn't eaten this thing for a long time. Hard things were really uncomfortable when they went into his stomach. Top-grade spirit stones were what he liked the most. Not only were they full of spiritual chi, they were also very convenient. However, he couldn't take them out and use them in front of everyone. Wouldn't that be too frightening? The group of disciples looked at the pills in their hands again. Their faces twitched nonstop. They all had the urge to throw them away. Chapter 164. When Quan Deming returned, there were only 15 jade archives left in his hands. After giving one to each of them, he told the disciples, "From today onwards, the main gate of the Cultivation Alliance will be guarded by disciples below the nascent soul stage. 2 people will guard the main gate every day." The jade archives in everyone's hands were the entry jade archives. After all, there were hundreds of disciples from each sect here. If an unfamiliar person entered, they could ask the other party to show them their jade archives. If the jade archives in the other party's hands contained their primordial chi, they would naturally be allowed to enter. Otherwise, they could refuse entry. After some arrangements, Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was below the nascent soul stage, so he naturally couldn't escape the misfortune of guarding the main gate. He and a core-bearing disciple named Xiong Hui were in the same group. In other words, once it was their turn, the 2 of them would guard the main gate together. Yu Qianqiu never expected that one day he would be reduced to the point of guarding the main gate. However, after thinking about it, it wasn't a big deal. With so many people from each sect taking turns, it wouldn't happen more than 3 times a year. He could just muddle through it. After everyone was given an entry token, Quan Deming finally lifted the ban on everyone. However, he had a request that they couldn't cause trouble for no reason. They could only stay in the 100 Flowers Valley and couldn't leave the valley without permission. Violators would be severely punished. Yu Qianqiu had long wanted to go out for a stroll. It was too boring to stay here. After everyone dispersed, he walked straight out of the garden on Fuxian Island. When he was about to step out of the main gate of the Cultivation Alliance, he suddenly heard someone shouting, "Yu Qianqiu," from behind. He turned around and saw that it was none other than Xiong Hui, who was in the same group as him. Yu Qianqiu turned around and asked curiously, "Senior Xiong, are you looking for me?" Xiong Hui laughed and said, "From now on, we'll be in the same group." He pointed at the 2 disciples who had already appeared at the main gate. "Oh," Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands and said, "Please take care of me in the future, Senior Xiong." Xiong Hui eagerly followed him, because he wanted to befriend him. He didn't dare to put on airs. Moreover, it was uncertain who would be taking care of who. He immediately waved his hand and said, "Junior brother Yu, You are too polite. We should take care of each other. By the way, it's already so late. I wonder where junior brother is going? Yu Qianqiu couldn't figure out what this guy was up to. He laughed it off and said, I'm bored. I heard that the night market in the 100 Flowers Valley is pretty good, so I want to go and have a look. What about you, senior brother? Huh, that's exactly what I was thinking. Since that's the case, why don't we go for a stroll and invite junior brother for a drink or two? Xionghui said with a smile. Looks like he wants to make friends with me. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, How can I let senior brother spend money? Junior brother should be the one treating. Xionghui smiled and said, It's all the same, it's all the same. Junior brother, don't be so polite with me today. It won't be too late to invite me next time. After saying that, he straightforwardly pulled Yu Qianqiu out, and the latter could only helplessly follow. When the two of them reached the door, the two disciples guarding the door suddenly bowed together and said, Senior Yu. Both Yu Qianqiu and Xionghui were stunned. They stopped to size up the two of them, and saw that they were only in the middle stage of foundation establishment. Yu Qianqiu asked curiously, Which sect are you from? How do you know me? The one on the left said respectfully, We're disciples from the Jiuhua sect. Today we met senior at the 100 Flowers Valley. Oh, I see. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head. He couldn't figure out what kind of sect this Jiuhua sect was, but it was definitely not one of the top 10 sections. Otherwise he would definitely have heard of it. Therefore, he reached into his storage bag and took out 2 essence chi pills and said, This is our first meeting, and I didn't bring anything. Take these 2 essence chi pills as a greeting gift for the two of you. As he said that, he threw one over. After the 2 disciples guarding the door caught it, they were immediately stunned. The 2 of them came from a small unranked sect, so they had never seen an essence chi pill of such quality. It was cold to the touch, and had a hazy white pill halo. Normally, an ordinary essence chi pill cost 50 low-grade spirit stones, which was enough to cover the spirit stones that the sect gave them every month. Therefore, essence chi pills were not something that disciples from small sects like them could afford. For a pill of this quality, the price would probably double. When the 2 of them came back to their senses, they realized that Yu Qianqiu and the other person had already walked far away. They couldn't help but shake their heads and sigh. The number 1 sect in the world was indeed not something that ordinary sects could compare to. In fact, it was the first time that Xionghui had seen this kind of essence chi pill with a pill halo, let alone them. He was also deeply moved. Who said that auxiliary sects were not as good as the cultivation pavilion? If he had known earlier, he would have joined the alchemy pavilion back then. The 2 of them chatted as they strolled to the night market in the 100 Flowers Valley. They saw that everywhere was filled with sparkling fluorescent stones. Under the dim light of the night, the entire night market was particularly enchanting. Looking around, the people wandering around, whether they were from the righteous path or the demonic path, were all leisurely and contented. There was no shouting and killing scene like in the outside world. Xionghui couldn't help but sigh and say, It would be great if the entire cultivation world could live in peace like this. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him and faintly smiled. Live in peace. Whether it was the secular world or the cultivation world, people were selfish. If everyone was selfish, then there would definitely be disputes. Unless everyone held the lofty ideal of starving to death and raising their birds to the sky, the waves would still be there. However, when he saw the night market in the 100 Flowers Valley, Yu Qianqiu felt a lot more emotional. He thought back to when he kidnapped Guan Yu and brought him here for the sake of his foundation establishment. Then, he took in Chen Feng here, and finally, he and Chu Pinger fell in love at the 100 Flowers Valley. In the blink of an eye, so many years had passed. In this situation, how can we not drink a few cups to liven things up? Junior brother Yu, where do you think we should go to drink a few cups? Xionghui's words pulled Yu Qianqiu back from his thoughts. He casually said, I didn't expect senior brother to be so easygoing. Let's go to the 100 Flowers Valley. With that said, he walked in the direction of the 100 Flowers Valley. 100 Flowers Valley? Xionghui was stunned. He reached for the storage bag on his waist and thought to himself, I heard that the food and wine of the 100 Flowers Valley are extremely expensive. Presumably, these spirit stones should be enough. Alright, it's rare to come here, so I'll pretend to be rich today. He hurried a few steps and followed Yu Qianqiu into the 100 Flowers Valley. The two of them found a seat by the window and sat down. They could also enjoy the beautiful scenery of the night market. When the waiter of the 100 Flowers Valley saw that the guests had arrived, he eagerly ran over to ask what the two of them wanted. Xionghui smiled generously and said, "Junior brother, just order whatever you want to eat." Yu Qianqiu nodded. He didn't stand on ceremony and said without thinking, "There's no need to order. Just eat whatever you want. Waiter, give me 2 pots of good 100 Flowers Valley wine and 5 servings of good meat and vegetable dishes. That's all for now. If it's not enough, we'll talk about it later." With that said, he looked out of the window in a daze. "Please wait a moment." Seeing that they were rich customers, the waiter quickly left with a smile. Xionghui, on the other hand, felt a little weak from Yu Qianqiu's good 2 times in a row. He couldn't help but reach for his storage bag again. Not long after, the waiter came back and forth twice and brought their food and wine. He respectfully invited the two of them to enjoy. The two of them picked up their chopsticks and tasted the food a few times. Xionghui looked at the table filled with 10 delicately cooked meat and vegetable dishes. He thought that the 100 Flowers Valley really lived up to its name. But for some reason, although the food tasted good, the more he ate, the more uncomfortable he felt. He felt like he was sweating. Yu Qianqiu was a person who never got tired of eating. As long as he could afford it, he would never mistreat himself when it came to food. He never thought about the price. It was fine as long as it was worth it. Of course, this was related to his wealth. However, he didn't know that Xionghui's hand under the table was about to tear his storage bag. "Did you guys hear? Ong Kwangsung's grandson was beaten up today." Hearing people talking about Ong Kwangsung, Yu Qianqiu turned his head and glanced at the 4 people who had just sat down at a table. Seeing that they were dressed quite well, they must be rich. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to come to the 100 Flowers Valley. He turned his head and listened while eating. Hee. This matter has already spread throughout the 100 Flowers Valley today. How could I not know? I heard that it was a disciple called Yu Qianqiu from supporting Immortal Island who beat him up. The #1 sect in the world is indeed not a boast. Just this disciple alone shocked Ong Kwangsung and the others. They didn't even dare to fight back. Hi, that goes without saying. Ong Kwangsung provoked the Blood Demon Palace and almost brought about the destruction of his sect. If it wasn't for supporting Immortal Island, Ong Kwangsung would have long been erased from the cultivation world. Yeah, I heard that too. Supporting Immortal Island is really amazing. Speaking of which, I know this Ong Kwangsung's Lu Zhenguang. A few years ago, he became Dao companions with a female disciple of his sect for dual cultivation. Seeing that his grandfather is the sect master of Ong Kwangsung, my father even brought me to Ong Kwangsung to congratulate him on his new year. TSK. Who knew that Lu Zhenguang had already been castrated by the devil path. Damn it! How dare a eunuch pretend to do dual cultivation? What a pity for that beautiful female disciple. Chapter 165. Hearing that Lu Zhenguang had actually become Dao companions with a beautiful female disciple, Yu Qianqiu was shocked. Beautiful female disciple? Could it be Chu Ping? As the saying goes, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. In Yu Qianqiu's heart, the most beautiful female disciple in the whole of Ong Kwangsung was naturally Chu Ping. She'll lower your voice. The 2 people sitting over there seemed to be disciples of supporting Xian Island from their attire. The 4 of them looked towards the window and instantly shut their mouths. Coincidentally, the waiter came over to ask the 4 of them to order, so they immediately changed the topic. Yu Qianqiu was listening to the crucial part, but they didn't say anything. This matter concerned Chu Ping, so how could he bear it? He stood up slowly and walked towards the table of the 4 of them with a gloomy face. Xionghui was in a bad mood. No matter how good the food was, it didn't taste good in his mouth. Suddenly, he saw Yu Qianqiu leave the table with a gloomy face. What was he going to do? He immediately followed. 4 of you, may I know which sect you are from? Yu Qianqiu calmed himself down and walked to the table with a smile. The four of them had just finished ordering. At this moment, they saw Yu Qianqiu walking over to ask questions. Looking at his attire and the person behind him, the four of them exchanged glances. As expected, they were disciples of supporting Xian Island. The four of them stood up. The person opposite Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands and said, "I am Bai Zizong. The four of us are good friends. We belong to the four great clans of the cultivation world. We agreed to come to the 100 Flowers Valley to have some fun. May I know what advice does Senior from supporting Xian Island have for us?" The four of them couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu and Xiong Hui's cultivation, so they naturally addressed them as seniors. However, Yu Qianqiu was able to see through their cultivation at a glance. Three of them were in the early stage of the core formation realm, and one of them was in the late stage of the foundation building realm. The four great clans of the cultivation world were the four great clans between the righteous and demonic paths. They were quite similar to the 100 Flowers Valley, neither belonging to the righteous path nor the demonic path. It was rumored that the four great clans were of the same breadth and branches, and their strength was also extraordinary. Of course, Yu Qianqiu had heard of them. He squinted his eyes and asked with a smile, "Are you from the Bai, Jing, Wu, and Tan families?" The four of them cupped their fists and said, "That's right." Bai Zizong respectfully asked, "May I know who Senior is from Fuxian Island?" So it turns out to be a disciple of one of the four major families of the cultivation world. It's an honor to meet you. Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists and said indifferently, "I'm not an expert. I'm the villain that you guys were talking about just now, Yu Qianqiu." As soon as he said this, the four of them looked at each other. Indeed, the gods were watching from above. Fortunately, they didn't say anything bad about him behind his back. Otherwise, it would be a mess. One must know that although the four great clans were quite powerful, they paled in comparison to Fuxian Island. Bai Zizong was stunned. He quickly bowed and said, "The four of us talked too much. We didn't know you were here. Please forgive us, Senior." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "I don't like to be secretive. What's done is done. There's no need to forgive us. It's just hitting someone. Some people were asking for it. Since I dared to hit them, I'm not afraid of others talking about it. Moreover, the four of you didn't say anything bad about me. What's wrong with that? Wasn't it just hitting someone? What a big tone." The four of them smiled unnaturally. They thought to themselves, only the disciples of Fuxian Island have such a tone. Ang Kuang Sung is ranked 6th in the righteous path. There aren't many that they can afford to offend. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to stir up the entire cultivation world. Even one of the four great clans can't match up to them. It's fate that brought us together. I, Yu Qianqiu, love to make friends. Why don't we have a drink together? I wonder if the four of you are willing to do me the honor? Yu Qianqiu smiled. Three of the four looked at Bai Zizong. The latter was a little hesitant. He didn't know what Yu Qianqiu wanted to do. It was necessary to be on guard when traveling in the cultivation world. Yu Qianqiu could tell that Bai Zizong was the leader of the four. He smiled faintly and said, "Don't the four of you want to give me a chance to flatter the four great clans?" His words were a little harsh. It was already good enough that the disciples of Fuxian Island didn't do whatever they wanted in the cultivation world. Was there a need to flatter others? At the same time, it was a reminder to the four of them. Bai Zizong cupped his hands awkwardly and said, "Then I shall accept your invitation." Yu Qianqiu nodded and shouted, "Boss." The waiter who was serving the dishes hurried over and asked what was the matter. "Prepare a good private room and the best banquet in 100 Flower House. Hurry, I have to entertain these guests." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand. The waiter looked at the dishes and asked, "What about the dishes on this table?" Yu Qianqiu pointed at the table, and then the table he was sitting at. "Put it on me. You go do what you need to do. By the way," he changed the topic and stopped the waiter. "This table of food and wine hasn't been touched yet. Go to the night market outside and find 4 cultivators who are currently living in poverty. Tell them that 100 Flowers House made a table of food and wine and invited them to taste it for free. You have to explain to them that after tasting it, they have to evaluate the taste of 100 Flowers House's food and wine. Don't say that it's free, understand? The waiter was stunned. He scratched his head. He had never seen such a strange customer. Seeing that he didn't respond, Yu Qianqiu said in a low voice, "What? Is my request too much? Don't tell me that you don't know which cultivators are living in poverty after being in 100 Flower House for so long. I understand. You are doing this out of kindness." The waiter smiled apologetically and retreated. He went to the counter and said a few words to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper looked over in surprise and nodded. The waiter ran out like a wisp of smoke. After a short while, the waiter led 4 cultivators in shabby clothes over with expressions of pleasant surprise on their faces. "Everyone, let's stand aside for a while. Don't disturb their appetite." Yu Qianqiu smiled and walked away with them. The manager of the 100 Flowers house walked out of the counter and said with a smile, "So it's Mr. Yu. Did you book the best banquet in the 100 Flowers house?" During the day, he had seen Yu Qianqiu beat someone up in front of everyone, so he naturally recognized him. Yu Qianqiu nodded and didn't say anything. The shopkeeper smiled. "Our best banquet costs 1,000 high-grade spirit stones. It will take some time to prepare. Please wait for a moment." 1,000 high-grade spirit stones for a banquet? Everyone was shocked. Even the 4 clans were no exception. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said coldly, "Shopkeeper, are you reminding me? Are you worried that I can't afford it?" He guessed right. The shopkeeper was afraid that he couldn't afford it, and specially came to remind him, so that everyone wouldn't feel awkward. There was no need to talk about supporting Immortal Island's wealth. However, Yu Qianqiu was only a core formation realm disciple. How could he take out 1,000 high-grade spirit stones? If he thought about it, he definitely wouldn't say it out loud. He smiled apologetically. No, Mr. Yu misunderstood. Please follow me to the private room upstairs and wait for a moment." After he finished speaking, he personally led the way. He thought to himself, "You're a disciple of supporting Immortal Island, so it's not good for me to offend you. However, if you can't take out the money when it's time to settle the bill, then it's not my problem. Naturally, someone will come looking for your supporting Immortal Island." Chapter 166. The second floor was for the guest rooms, where Yu Qianqiu had stayed before. Nobody knew what the third floor was for. They followed the innkeeper all the way to the top floor, the 4th floor. They pushed open an antique red sandalwood carved wooden door, and a bright and spacious private room appeared in front of them. The innkeeper asked them to wait for a while, then left with a smile. They peeked through the window and looked out. As there were no taller buildings around, the 100 Flowers Valley was right in front of them, under the dim light of the night. If it was during the day, it would be a different scene. He then looked at the furnishings around the room. Every single one of them was exquisitely crafted, quiet, and emitted a faint sense of elegance and nobility. The night breeze blew over, bringing with it the faint fragrance of 100 flowers. There was also a bed for Xiao Tian in the inner room, and a small isolated room for convenience and bathing. The so-called private room was a luxurious suite that could allow people to rest in peace. "I didn't expect there to be such a good place in the 100 Flowers Valley." Xionghui was a little surprised. He was relaxed now, and the bills downstairs were all taken care of by Yu Qianqiu. As for the matter of fighting to treat them, he would not even mention it. As expected of a private room. Bai Zizong looked around and nodded. Suddenly, he shook his head and said, "It's just that we can't afford to let seniors spend so much money. 1,000 top-grade spirit stones is too much." "That's nothing. I've been to all the luxurious places in my previous life." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand calmly and said, "Let's not talk about money tonight. This thing is a bastard. It's too disappointing to talk about it." They were speechless. Soon after, the door was pushed open and 6 beautiful women in palace attire entered, carrying wine utensils and dishes in a single file. After going in and out a few times, they filled the bright table inside and respectfully invited them to take a seat. After they were seated, a woman poured wine for each of them. Yu Qianqiu frowned and waved his hand, saying, "You may leave. We have something to discuss, and we don't want anyone to disturb us." "Yes." The ladies bowed and put down the wine jugs in their hands. The woman behind Yu Qianqiu untied a golden bell from the necklace around her neck and gently placed it on the table. She said softly, "If the honored guest has something to summon us, just ring this bell." Yu Qianqiu turned around and saw that there was another bell on her necklace. He nodded and dismissed the women. "Oh my god. What are these things? They actually cost 1,000 top-grade spirit stones." Xiong Hui exclaimed as he poked his chopsticks. "No matter how expensive it is, it's just food, a gimmick to make money." Yu Qianqiu gestured with his hand and said, "Let's eat and talk." They would be letting themselves down if they didn't try such expensive dishes. The few of them ate a few dishes. They tasted each other a few times, but they could not find anything special. As they chatted, they became familiar with each other and started calling each other brothers. Jingzhua, Wu Liqing and Tan Fei also introduced themselves. When he found out that the four of them were the heirs of the four major clans, Yu Qianqiu was not too surprised. Ordinary people would not go to 100 Blossom's house. Yu Qianqiu had something on his mind. After they got to know each other, he put down his wine cup and asked, "Brother Bai, I heard you talking about On Kuangsung Lu Zhengguang's dual cultivation. You said that his Taoist companion is very beautiful. I'm really curious, who is it that actually became a Taoist companion with the eunuch?" Bai Zitsong pointed to Tan Fei and said, "You'll have to ask him. He said he's met her." Tan Fei smiled and said, "A few years ago, I followed my father to On Kuangsung and met her. That woman is a disciple of On Kuangsung. She's really pretty. As for her name, I can't remember it." Yu Qianqiu's heart sank, but on the surface he smiled and said, "Brother Tan, you may not know this, but I've always been more interested in stunning beauties. Brother Tan, please think carefully about her name. If there's a chance, I'll go to On Kuangsung and have a look. Other people are afraid of On Kuangsung, but I'm not. You even dared to hit the head's grandson, so naturally you wouldn't be afraid." The few of them looked at Yu Qianqiu with a smile that said, "I'll support you." "I see. Let me think about it." Tan Fei held his wine glass and thought for a long time before he said, "Oh, I can't remember her full name, but I think her surname is Su." "Is her surname really Su? Are you sure you remember it correctly?" Yu Qianqiu continued to ask. Now that he thought about it, he remembered that On Kuangsung had a pretty female disciple with the surname Su. Tan Fei frowned again and thought about it. He nodded and said, "It should be right. At that time, I heard a few female disciples of On Kuangsung calling her senior sister Su." After getting his confirmation, Yu Qianqiu's heart instantly relaxed. He raised his glass and smiled at everyone. "All right, I'll remember it. On Kuangsung beauty with the surname Su. If there's a chance, you must go and meet her. Don't let that eunuch take advantage of you. Come, let's have a toast." As soon as he let it go, the atmosphere among everyone changed. They let go of their stomachs and ate to their heart's content. The six of them ate until late at night before they were ready to leave. The golden bell rang and the six women entered. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Bill, please." The other five were shocked when they heard that. They then remembered that the dishes cost 1,000 superior grade spiritual stones. Even Bai Zitsong and the other three from the four families felt the pinch. Not long after, the innkeeper ran in and smiled respectfully. "Mr. Yu, including the 2 tables below, the total is 1,000 orders and 35 upper grade spirit stones. You are a VIP, so the 2 tables below are free of charge. Please come again in the future. Just pay 1,000 upper grade spirit stones. The 100 Flowers house is really rich. 35 superior grade spiritual stones is waived just like that." Yu Qianqiu sneered and took out another storage pouch from his storage pouch. He threw it over and said, "You check if it's 1,000 upper rank spirit stones and see if I'm missing anything." "Yes, yes, yes." The innkeeper caught the storage bag and nodded. He inserted his divine sense into the bag and was shocked. There were indeed 1,000 superior grade spiritual stones in it. He smiled apologetically. "Please wait for a moment, Mr. Yu. I'll empty the storage bag for you." Xiong Hui was speechless. He was prepared to dine and dash with Yu Qianqiu. He did not expect him to really take out 1,000 superior grade spiritual stones. Oh my, this was not just any ordinary kind of money. Bai Zitsong, and the other 3 did not know the details. They only dared to eat a meal that cost 1,000 superior-grade spiritual stones, because they trusted the reputation of the supporting Xian Island. Now that they had paid so much money, the 4 of them exchanged glances and thought to themselves, the disciples of the supporting Xian Island are indeed extraordinary. They did not even blink when they paid 1,000 superior-grade spiritual stones. Forget it. You can waive 35 superior-grade spiritual stones from me. I don't care about this broken storage bag, Yu Qianqiu said and walked out. If it was any other time, he would ask for it back even if it was a piece of inferior-grade spiritual stone. He would not pretend to be generous when he was stingy. However, he was really happy today. After knowing that Lu Zhengguang's cultivation partner was not Chu Ping, he felt relieved. In fact, he was really afraid that the woman he was in love with would betray him. There was another reason. He had made friends with the direct descendants of the 4 major families in the cultivation world. He had spent a lot of money. How could he be embarrassed over a storage bag? Innkeeper Chen, which esteemed guest booked the best banquet in the 100 Flowers residence. Why don't you introduce him to me? Yu Qianqiu had only taken a few steps when a person's voice suddenly came from outside. Yan Juexing walked in with a smile on his face. When the latter saw Yu Qianqiu, he cupped his hands and said happily, I was wondering which esteemed guest it was. It's Brother Yu. Brother Yan. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands. Yan Juexing frowned at the innkeeper and said, Innkeeper Chen, how much did you take from Brother Yu? Innkeeper Chen handed over the storage bag in his hand respectfully and said, Innkeeper Chen, how much did you take from Brother Yu? Nonsense. Yan Juexing took the storage bag and shouted, Innkeeper Chen, seeing that you didn't know, I won't pursue this matter. But remember, Brother Yu is my friend. In the future, as long as Brother Yu comes to the 100 Flowers residence, all the expenses will be on me. Do you hear me? Innkeeper Chen nodded. Yan Juexing snorted and looked at Yu Qianqiu with a smile. Brother Yu, if you treat me as a friend, please take back the spiritual stones. Yu Qianqiu crossed his arms and smiled, not saying a word. He glanced at the shopkeeper and the master, his eyes narrowing. Friends? It seems like this is the first time we've interacted and spoken. I've interacted with your sister before. This way we can't be considered as friends, but as relatives. This brat is interesting. He didn't come earlier or later. He just had to come after I paid. It seems like it's already the middle of the night. He's really punctual. This brat knows how to conduct himself. Interesting. Chapter 167. Brother Yan, you're too kind. How can you eat without paying? Yu Qianqiu extended his hand to stop the spiritual stones. You can't say that. I feel like old friends with Brother Yu, and I really want to be friends with you. A banquet is nothing. If Brother Yu thinks highly of me and is willing to be friends with me, then please take back the spiritual stones. Yan Juexing said with sincerity. Damn it. Money is a bastard. Money is a bastard. Yu Qianqiu turned around and looked at Bai Zizong and the others. He smiled and said, It's my honor to be friends with Brother Yan. If that's the case, then I'll accept it. He took back the spiritual stones and stuffed them into his storage pouch. Yan Juexing nodded with a smile. He looked at Xiong Hui and the others and asked, Brother Yu, who are they? This is my senior brother, and these 4 are my good friends. Yu Qianqiu didn't want to reveal the identity of Bai Zizong and the others, so he just casually said it. The 5 people behind him cupped their hands at Yan Juexing and didn't say anything. Yan Juexing didn't mind at all and cupped his hands. Since your brother Yu's friends, then you're my friends too. I'm Yan Juexing. Friends, feel free to drop by whenever you're free. I'll pay for all your expenses. After they thanked him again, they knew that it was all thanks to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu looked out of the window and said regretfully, It's a pity that it's getting late. We'll have to leave now. We'll come again next time. Please forgive us, Brother Yan. Yan Juexing nodded and smiled. Since you're in a hurry to go back, I won't force you to stay. Please. The group of people went downstairs politely. Yan Juexing sent them to the entrance of the 100 Flowers house before they said goodbye. After watching them leave, Yan Juexing turned around and looked around the room. Seeing that there were no more guests, the smile on his face disappeared in the blink of an eye. His expression was cold and indifferent. Shopkeeper Chen, who was behind him, said, "I can't believe you Qianqiu can really take out 1,000 spiritual stones." "Humph. Didn't you see what happened today?" Yan Juexing sneered. "A core formation realm disciple can make the Daoyuo sect and the Moon clan so friendly. He's worth more than 1,000 top-grade spiritual stones. Also, under the watchful eyes of all the major sects, he beat up the grandson of the Qingguang school's leader. Was this something a normal completion-level disciple could do?" You Qianqiu, who are you?" Shopkeeper Chen nodded and said, "Now that you mention it, it's really strange. Even for the wealthy supporting Immortal Island, a normal core formation cultivator would not be able to take out 1,000 high-quality spirit stones. Uncle Chen, there's something you need to investigate." Yan Juexing turned around, looked outside and slowly said, "I don't believe that Yu Qianqiu would spend 1,000 high-grade spirit stones for a few ordinary friends. Didn't you say that he just met those 4 people in the lobby downstairs? Find out the background of those 4 people." Bai Zizong and the other 3 insisted on sending them off. The other 2 couldn't refuse. The 6 of them walked to the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance and were about to go their separate ways. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands. "Okay, I'll stop here. I just settled here, and there are a lot of things I don't know yet. I won't invite you in." "Ha! Today was supposed to be my treat, but someone stole my thunder. Since we're brothers, I won't stand on ceremony. I'll make it up to you next time." The 4 of them came from influential families, so they had seen a lot of hypocrisy. Yu Qianqiu's frankness caused the 4 of them to become much closer. The 4 of them looked at each other and smiled. Bai Zizong laughed. "We've eaten a lot of good stuff, but this is the first time we've had a banquet that costs 1,000 spiritual stones. That Yan Juexing, haha, he admires Brother Yu a lot. Yeah, he just paid the bill, and he's already helping me save money. His admiration is timely, but I think he admires the 4 of you too." Yu Qianqiu sighed and winked at the 4 of them. "It's so easy talking to smart people. Don't." Bai Zizong waved his hand and smiled. "Our 4 families can't compare to your Fuxian Island. Such admiration should be left to Brother Yu alone. I'd rather be stupid. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep at night." The 4 of them burst into laughter. Only Xionghui smiled. He didn't know what the 5 of them were talking about, and what they were laughing about. The 4 families also had shops in the 100 Flowers Valley. They didn't have to worry about not having a place to stay. They made an appointment with Yu Qianqiu to meet again next time, and went their separate ways. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Xionghui, then at the 4 of them. He shook his head slightly. The next day, Quan Deming and the elders of the various sects were busy. No one knew what they were discussing. Yu Qianqiu spent some effort to get rid of Xionghui. He wandered around the market in the 100 Flowers Valley. He realized that it wasn't a bad thing that the Cultivation Alliance was located in the 100 Flowers Valley. If Utopia needed anything, he could purchase it here. They casually walked to a stall selling talismans. The stall owner was an old man with a smile on his face. Yu Qianqiu sized him up and discovered that he was actually still in the middle stage of the foundation building realm, despite his age. He then pointed at the talisman papers on the stall and asked, "Did you make all the talisman papers here yourself?" The old man realized that he couldn't see through the cultivation of the young man in front of him. He immediately nodded and said yes. "How much are you selling these talismans?" Yu Qianqiu asked. The old man was stunned. He smiled apologetically. "Sir, you're mistaken. I only sell talismans here. I don't sell white talismans." Yu Qianqiu frowned. "Why not? Don't you want to earn spirit stones by setting up a stall?" The old man chuckled. "I won't hide it from you. I spent a lot of time and effort to make these talismans. If I offer a high price, you won't be happy. If I offer a low price, the profit will be too low." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and interrupted him. "Don't be long-winded. Name a price that you're willing to sell. Since you said so, I'll tell you." The old man spread out 4 different colored talismans on the stall. Level 1 white talismans cost 10 low-grade spirit stones. Level 2 white talismans cost 1 low-grade spirit stone. Level 3 white talismans cost 1 mid-grade spirit stone. As for level 4 white talismans, you must know that the materials used are not ordinary. They cost 50 mid-grade spirit stones each. Yu Qianqiu understood that the material he was talking about was not ordinary. Normally, the talisman paper that could reach the standard of the 4th level was usually made from human skin and other materials that were good at guiding spirituality. However, the old man's price was not low. It was even higher than the talismans that Chen Feng sold here. It seemed that he wanted to make him back off. He could not help but frown. I'll reduce the price of all white talismans by half. I'll take all of them. Reduce by half? All of them? The old man muttered as he twirled his beard. He looked at the thousands of white talismans on the stall and considered whether it was worth it to make a small profit, but quick turnover. Yu Qianqiu also knew that his price was a little too high. However, when he talked to Chen Feng last night, Chen Feng told him that he needed a lot of white talismans to train his subordinates. He wanted him to think of a solution as soon as possible. Yu Qianqiu attached great importance to this matter. If he could train a group of talisman-making experts to provide logistical support for the army, it was worth it to spend more money. Fortunately, he was in the 100 Flowers Valley. It was not difficult to solve this problem. Seeing that he was still hesitating, Yu Qianqiu frowned. This is the price. You don't have to think about it anymore. From today onwards, I'll take all of your white talismans. This is the deposit for tomorrow. He threw a high-grade spirit stone on the stall. Chapter 168. The amber gold color made the old man's eyes light up. A piece of upper-grade spirit stone was enough for him to trade for a few days. He grabbed it to verify its authenticity and immediately nodded. We'll do as you say. I'll count it for you. He immediately counted the white talismans in the stall. There were more than 1,000 white talismans, but there were only a dozen of level 4 talismans. The rest were not worth much to Yu Qianqiu. In the end, it cost a total of 7 upper-grade spirit stones. Yu Qianqiu threw 8 to him and stuffed all the white talismans into his storage bag. Then he ordered, keep the change. You've already taken the deposit. Remember to bring more tomorrow. The same price. I'll take as much as you have. The old man repeatedly said yes. Suddenly, he was startled as if he remembered something. He hesitantly took out a piece of upper-grade spirit stone and said, to tell you the truth, I've already given you what I have. It will take a few days to gather more materials. I'll have to go out of the 100 Flowers Valley to find some materials. I won't be able to deliver it to you tomorrow. You should take back the deposit first. Yu Qianqiu frowned and asked, how long will it take for you to come back? The old man thought for a while and said, 2 to 3 days at least, 5 to 6 days at most. It depends on the time needed to gather materials. In that case, you should keep the deposit. I'll be staying in the 100 Flowers Valley for a long time. Prepare more goods. I'll come to get them when I have time. I'm sure you won't abscond with the deposit, right? Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. Yo, look at what you're saying. I'm Donghua Su, and I've set up a stall in the 100 Flowers Valley for a few decades to make a living. My entire family has settled down in the 100 Flowers Valley, so I can't ruin the livelihood of my entire family just for a piece of high-grade spirit stone from you. Besides, I'm not blind. I can tell that you're a disciple of supporting Immortals Island from your attire. I can provoke anyone, but supporting Immortals Island. The old man Donghua smiled apologetically. It's good that you understand. It's a deal then. Yu Qianqiu said indifferently and left. Considering that the supply of old man Donghua's family might not be able to keep up with the demand, he wandered around the market and found several stalls that made talismans. After bargaining, he also bought a lot of talismans. After wandering around for a while, he looked at the time. It was almost time for the appointment he had with Bai Zizong and the other 3 yesterday. When he walked to the Bai clan's shop, Bai Zizong and the other 3 were already looking at him with smiles on their faces. The 5 of them joked around and discussed where they should go for a drink. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, I seem to recall Yan Juexing saying that all my expenses in the 100 Flowers residence will be on him. right? Tan Fei was stunned. Brother, you can't really be thinking of going to 100 Flowers house again, right? Can't I? Why wouldn't I eat if it's free? Yu Qianqiu asked back. The four of them immediately looked at each other. After all, they were from a big clan. They really couldn't do such a shameless thing. Bai Zitsong smiled and said, he's being polite. But it's not good for us to take it seriously, right? Let's go somewhere else. It's really a problem of being spoiled by big clans. Their skin is quite thin. Forget it, I'll take the lead. You guys can just treat it as my treat. Stop daydreaming, let's go. Let's go. Yu Qianqiu said as he pushed the four of them. Unable to dissuade him, the four of them helplessly followed him to 100 Flowers house. However, once they reached the door, they took the initiative to keep a distance from him and pretended to be calm as they looked around. Yu Qianqiu felt a little strange when he stepped into the door. Why was there no one downstairs today? When shopkeeper Chen saw him, he quickly walked over and said respectfully, Mr. Yu, are you here to look for my young master? Oh, that's not it. Today, I'll treat the four of you to a drink or two. As he said that, he pointed at Bai Zitsong and the other three. When the four of them heard what he said, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They felt a little embarrassed and turned their heads to the side, as if they were attracted by some scenery. Shopkeeper Chun was stunned at first, then his face twitched slightly. He smiled apologetically and said, if that's the case, the five of you should go to the private room upstairs. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, the five of us will just find a table downstairs to eat something. No matter how thick-skinned he was, he couldn't always come to eat the best banquet of others. This, shopkeeper Chen hesitated for a while and explained, Mr. Yu, I'm really sorry today. The restaurant downstairs is not receiving any guests. The few of you, please go to the private room upstairs. Cleared? Did someone book the entire restaurant? Yu Qianqiu was shocked. No wonder there were no guests downstairs. At this moment there was a commotion outside. Yu Qianqiu poked his head out to take a look and was shocked. Yan Juexing and Yan Zixia were leading a large group of people, and the person in the middle was none other than the 10,000 demons Qiu Wuyuan. Many people felt that he looked familiar. What's going on? While they were shocked, shopkeeper Chen explained. The Diabolism has formed an alliance of Diabolism. They are also staying in the 100 Flowers Valley. The 100 Flowers Palace is going to welcome them at the 100 Flowers house. So we have to clear the restaurant. Mr. Yu, please give me some face and invite me to the private room upstairs. The righteous created a cultivation alliance, and the Diabolism created an alliance of Diabolism. Damn, they are opposing each other. There's going to be a good show. I was wondering what these old guys were busy with today. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. Shopkeeper Chen, I didn't know you were busy today. It's our fault. I'll come again another day. Not at all, not at all. Shopkeeper Chen was still trying to be polite. Yu Qianqiu turned around and left. He didn't want to stay and greet Qiu Wuyuan and the others. The righteous and the Diabolism had already started fighting. As a small disciple, it was better for him not to get involved. He called Bai Zitsong and the others to change places. The four of them didn't want to come, so they didn't have any objections. It's little brother Yu Qianqiu in front. After walking a few steps, Qiu Wuyuan, whose eyes were sharper, had already raised his voice and shouted, Yu Qianqiu, where? Where? Qiu Wuyuan's shout immediately caused the disciples of the Myriad Demons Temple, the Blood Devil Temple, and the Corpse God sect to boil up. Many disciples of the three sects had heard of Yu Qianqiu's name in the Demon Ghost region. Unfortunately, most of them had never seen him. Now that they heard of Yu Qianqiu, they naturally wanted to see him. Old thing, will you die if you don't shout? Yu Qianqiu squeezed out a smile on his face, turned around and cupped his hands towards Qiu Wuyuan, who was walking over quickly. Senior Qiu, I haven't seen you for many years, but you are still as elegant as ever, truly worthy of congratulations. Bai Zitsong and the others didn't know what was going on. They stopped to watch. Wasn't this Yu Qianqiu a disciple of Fuxian Island? Why was he so familiar with the Diabolism? Moreover, it seemed like they had a close relationship. Haha. Xiao Wuyuan looked back at his fellow Diabolism members and laughed heartily. I knew I wouldn't be wrong. It's indeed Brother Yu Qianqiu. The people of the three major Diabolism sects also gathered around, as if they had seen a rare animal. Many of them cupped their hands and said, I've heard a lot about you. Yu Qianqiu also cupped his hands towards them. Although Yan Zixia tried her best to pretend that she didn't know Yu Qianqiu, she couldn't help but be surprised. Since when did he have a relationship with the Diabolism people? The Diabolism people didn't seem to have any ill intentions towards him. Especially Qiu Wuyuan, who treated him like an old friend. This was a little unbelievable in the cultivation world. Yan Zhuixing's eyes flickered between Yu Qianqiu and the Diabolism people. He was actually shocked. He thought to himself, what is the background of this Yu Qianqiu? Chapter 169. Haha. Being able to see little brother again is truly a joyous thing. Come, let us drink a cup with little brother. Qiu Wuyuan extended his hand and pulled Yu Qianqiu's arm towards the 100 Flowers house. Yu Qianqiu did not know whether to laugh or cry. They were in public. Could you please be more mindful of your image? Diabolism and righteous sects are so close. How am I going to explain this? He struggled a little and shook his head with a bitter smile. Senior Qiu, please reconsider. Qiu Wuyuan turned around and said in a daze, could it be that little brother is looking down on this old man and not giving me face? Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, Senior, please consider for me. I am a disciple of Fuxian Island. Qiu Wuyuan glanced around and instantly understood Yu Qianqiu's concerns. He immediately let go of Yu Qianqiu's arm and said with an embarrassed smile, I was a bit too excited to see little brother. I didn't put myself in your shoes. Since that's the case, little brother, please do as you please. Senior, you think highly of me. Yu Qianqiu said politely and cupped his hands. I still have something to do, so I can't stay for long. If there's a chance in the future, I will invite all of you to have a drink with me. Goodbye. After that, he pulled Bai Zizong and the other three out of the crowd. The three major demonic sects cupped their hands at him. At this moment, Yan Zhuixing's mood was indescribable. A disciple from a righteous sect could make the three major demonic sects give him face. It was unbelievable. What had happened behind the scenes? Of course, he did not know that Yu Qianqiu had saved the lives of the disciples from the three major demonic sections. The righteous sects might think that Yu Qianqiu should have saved the disciples of the righteous sects. But to the demonic sects, it was a huge debt of gratitude. The demonic sects had always been particular about taking revenge, unlike the righteous sects who had many concerns. It was the demonic sects' way of doing things. The five entered a remote restaurant and sat down. Bai Zizong applauded softly and smiled. Brother Yu is really admirable. Even the demonic sects have to look at you differently. If Brother Yu said you were just an ordinary disciple of Fuxian Island, I wouldn't believe it even if you beat me to death. Seeing that the four of them wanted to ask, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand. Stop. I am indeed an ordinary disciple of the supporting Immortal Island. It's just that some things happened in the past. My sect also knows about it, but it's not convenient for me to tell you now. Don't ask. Even if you ask, I won't tell you. When the time is right, I will not hide it anymore. He said it so straightforwardly, so the four of them didn't ask any more questions. They called for food and wine to be served. They chatted and laughed for a while. After eating and drinking, Yu Qianqiu told the four that the elders of the sect allowed him to bring his friends to visit the Cultivation Alliance. He didn't know if the four of them would be interested. In fact, ordinary people wouldn't pay attention to the four of them because of their identities. They got along with Yu Qianqiu purely because of the golden signboard of Fuxian Island. After spending some time with him, the four of them greatly appreciated Yu Qianqiu's straightforward character and treated him as a friend. Now that they heard that they could visit the Cultivation Alliance, they readily agreed. It was not a place that ordinary people could enter casually. Yu Qianqiu threw out some spiritual stones to pay the bill. The five drunkards walked toward the Cultivation Alliance, chatting and laughing. When they came to the gate, they suddenly saw a few people coming out. It was Lu Wanwan who led them out. The two of them looked at each other. Lu Wanwan snorted coldly and ignored him. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him casually and ignored him. Suddenly, his eyes swept over a beautiful figure among them, and his body suddenly trembled. The few of them brushed past them. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and slowly turned around. If he didn't see it wrong, the beautiful woman was none other than On Kuangsung's Chu Ping. Why was she here? She clearly saw him, but why didn't she recognize him? Could it be that his appearance had changed so much? Yu Qianqiu touched his face subconsciously. Bai Zizong and the other three also found something wrong with him. Tan Fei suddenly said in a low voice, "Brother Yu, if I remember correctly, the beautiful woman among them seemed to be the person you wanted to see. She should be Lu Zhenguang's Taoist partner." Yu Qianqiu's entire body shook when he heard this. And then he turned around and suddenly grabbed Tan Fei's collar, as he shouted explosively, "What did you say? Didn't you say that his Taoist partner's surname is Su?" The few of them were shocked, and quickly separated the two. Tan Fei shouted angrily, "Brother Yu, what do you mean by this? Do you really think that the four major families are afraid of Fuxian Island?" Yu Qianqiu clenched his fist so hard that cracking sounds could be heard. He suppressed the anger in his chest and slowly said in a deep voice, "Brother Tan, please don't take offense. I was the one who didn't control myself. Please follow me. I have something to say." After that he left. The other four people exchanged glances and nodded, then followed him. The two disciples of the Cultivation Alliance also knew Yu Qianqiu. They didn't know what happened to him. The few of them arrived at a secluded mountain field, and Yu Qianqiu slowly turned around and said in a low voice, "Brother Tan, that woman from before is a woman I haven't seen for many years. Her name is Chu Ping, They were all stunned. Tan Fei's mouth was wide open. If his woman was said to be someone else's Taoist partner, he would definitely kill that person. He couldn't help but say, How is this possible? She should be On Kuangsung's disciple. How did she become your woman?" Bai Zizong also knew that the problem was getting out of hand. He frowned and said, "Tan Fei, what's wrong with you? Didn't you say that Lu Zhenguang's Taoist partner's surname is Su? How did she become the Chu Ping, or that brother you mentioned? Did you get the wrong person?" Su, Chu. Damn it. It's not that I heard it wrong. It's just that it's been too long, and I can't remember it correctly. Tan Fei was annoyed. Yu Qianqiu said in a low voice, "Tan Fei, are you sure that the person you saw in On Kuangsung was her, and not someone else?" "Brother Yu, I won't hide it from you. This woman's appearance is really good. You all saw it just now. I saw her in On Kuangsung, and I remembered her deeply. There's no mistaking her. She is indeed the Taoist partner that I saw in On Kuangsung with Lu Zhenguang. Unless Lu Zhenguang changed again, there's no mistaking her. Damn it. What nonsense did I say? Brother Yu, I'm really sorry." Tan Fei didn't even know what expression he had when he said this. Everyone was silent. They all knew that Lu Zhenguang was a eunuch. Finding a woman to be his Taoist partner was probably to cover up his flaws. Why would he change women so casually unless he had a screw loose? "Junior Marshal Brother Yu, Junior Marshal Brother Yu." Xionghui suddenly appeared not far away and shouted. He jogged over and cupped his fist, smiling. "Yo! Brother Bai, Brother Jing, Brother Wu, Brother Tan. The four of you are here too." The four of them had something on their minds. They forced a smile and nodded as a greeting. Xionghui did not mind. He walked over to Yu Qianqiu's side and said with a smile, "Junior brother, you really made me look for you for a long time. I didn't expect you to come here. Are you here to see the scenery? What a good mood." He looked around as he spoke. Yu Qianqiu said indifferently, "Senior Marshal brother, is there anything you need from me?" Xionghui nodded and smiled. "Junior Marshal brother, let me tell you something funny. Today, people from On Kuangsung came to On Kuangsung to bring Lu Zhenguang back to 100 Flowers Palace. Didn't you say you wanted to see Lu Zhenguang's beautiful Taoist partner? Haha, you might not know, but his Taoist partner is here too. I saw her just now. She's really beautiful. Sigh. It's such a pity that a eunuch like Lu Zhenguang found such a beautiful Taoist partner. Junior Marshal brother, they are going back in the afternoon. Why don't you go and see them now? You don't have to go to On Kuangsung in the future." Yu Qianqiu didn't get angry after listening to him. Instead, he laughed sinisterly. Hee hee. Very good, very good. Bai Zitsong and the other three knew that he was laughing out of anger. They rolled their eyes at Xiong Hui. This guy really touched my sore spot. In Utopia, Guan Yu was cultivating cross-legged on the bed. Suddenly, he heard Yu Qianqiu's gloomy voice. Yinchang. Order the troops to enter level 1 combat readiness. Chapter 170. Guan Yu abruptly opened his eyes and nodded heavily. Then he got off the bed and opened the door. He walked to the stone platform in the field and raised his head to look at the black flag embroidered with the word hero, fluttering in the wind on the flagpole. He felt a surge of excitement. He thought, this is the first time boss gave an order. It seems like it's time to test the combat ability of this team. He took out a golden horn from his storage bag and blew it hard. Senior brother, you should go back first. We have something private to talk about, Yu Qianqiu said expressionlessly. Xiong Hui was stunned. He looked at them and realized that everyone's expression was not normal. Something must have happened. He nodded and said, it's okay. You guys talk, I'll go back first. He then left quickly. After a moment of silence, Bai Zitsong frowned and said, Brother Yu, what's going on? Why is Ong Kwangsung's female disciple your woman? Do you really want to know? Yu Qianqiu's voice was emotionless. Bai Zitsong thought for a while and said, Brother Yu, if you really treat us as brothers, why don't you tell us? Perhaps the four of us can be of some help. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and thought about how Chu Ping had become someone else's wife. His heart ached. All these years of hard work was mixed with his feelings for her. He was hurt in pain and even knelt. He never forgot the promise he made in the past. Why did he treat her like a stranger when they met again? Memories of all these years flashed in his mind. He didn't expect that the thing he insisted on would be trampled on by someone else. His heart hurt. Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. When he opened his eyes again, he was facing the mountains. He let out a long breath and said, Before I joined Fuxian Island, I was Ong Kwangsung's disciple. Ah. The four of them were shocked and looked at each other. This was a taboo in the cultivation world. Jingzhou looked at him and said, Brother Yu was expelled by Ong Kwangsung? According to the four of them, he must have been expelled by Ong Kwangsung before he joined Fuxian Island. Otherwise, he would have committed a huge taboo. No. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and looked into the distance. When I first entered the cultivation world, I joined Ong Kwangsung. I met a master who was very good to me. That was when I met Chu Ping. Later, in order to prepare for my foundation establishment, my master was killed when he went out on a trip. You guys haven't stayed in Ong Kwangsung, so you don't know how difficult it is for a disciple to survive without the protection of a master. Not long after, because I got close to Chu Ping, I offended Lu Zhenguang and was sent to the Spirit Stone mine to do hard labor. Life there is so difficult that you disciples of big families can't imagine. At that time, the people of Enchanted Illusion Palace attacked the Spirit Stone mine. In order to escape, Ong Kwangsung's elder Lu Wanwan used his disciples as a shield. I was one of them. He grabbed me by the neck and threw me out. Yu Qianqiu paused and turned back to look at them. Fortunately, I was lucky and didn't die. At that time, I thought that since my life was so worthless in Ong Kwangsung, I might as well leave. So I took this opportunity to escape. Later on, I met Chu Ping again in the 100 Flowers house in the 100 Flowers Valley. The two of us made a promise to each other that we wouldn't part until we met again in a few years. It was also at this time that I personally castrated Lu Zhenguang. Ah, the four were stunned. Tan Fei was stunned. You castrated Lu Zhenguang? Yu Qianqiu nodded. That's right. Since I see you four as my brothers, there's no need to hide it from you. I can swear to God that I haven't mentioned this to anyone except the four of you. His story was half true and half false, and he even modified it a little. In the end, the four of them became somewhat excited. For Yu Qianqiu to be able to reveal such a secretive matter, and even swear an oath, it was clearly true. Bai Zitsong exhaled and said, So that's how it is. What happened after that? After that, maybe my luck changed. It was also the same day that I was introduced to supporting Xian Island. I was lucky enough to be accepted as the only disciple of supporting Xian Island's Alchemy Pavilion's principal elder. Thus, I focused on cultivation. When I stepped into the 100 Flowers Valley again, I met you four by chance. You all know what happened after that. Principal elder of supporting Xian Island's Alchemy Pavilion? Could it be the pill addict Senior Guan in the cultivation world? Wu Liqing asked. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands in the direction of supporting Xian Island. That's my master. Jing Zhuo nodded. That's not bad. I was just wondering how Brother Yu was able to reach the core formation stage in less than 10 years. So it was because of Senior Guan's medicinal pills. The four clans naturally knew the Guan clan's status in supporting Xian Island. No wonder Yu Qianqiu dared to hit someone in public. He was also so rich. It turned out that he was a direct descendant of the Guan clan. The four of them secretly thought that it wasn't a waste to make this friend. Maybe he could help them smoothly inherit the position of the clan leader. Bai Zizong sighed. No wonder Brother Yu was so excited when he saw Chu Ping. It seems like she let you down. But why would she become Dao companions with the eunuch? I'm afraid there's something she had to do. I think Brother Yu shouldn't be too anxious. Let's investigate this matter first. There's something we won't hide from Brother Yu. The four of us are the first successors of the four clans. Why don't we use the four clans' power to help you investigate this matter? The other three nodded in agreement. This is returning a favor. I've already guessed that the four of you are important in the four clans. Otherwise, how can a normal descendant live such a leisurely life in the 100 Flowers Valley? I also can't play with you all day long. Yu Qianqiu shook his head. No need. I want to ask this personally, but there's something I need to trouble the four of you with. The four of them looked at each other. Bai Zizong nodded. Brother Yu, you don't have to be so courteous. From today onwards we're brothers. If there's anything we can help with, just let us know. Yu Qianqiu didn't stand on ceremony. He took out a small porcelain bottle from his middle finger and dripped a drop of blood into it. Then he pretended to cast a spell. After closing the bottle, he passed it to Bai Zizong. Isn't Ong Guangsung bringing Lu Zhengguang back? I believe it's not just one or two people. I need to go back and deploy some forces to prevent any accidents. I'll have to trouble the four of you to help me keep an eye on him. Once we're out of the 100 Flowers Valley, Brother Bai can open this bottle. I'll know where you guys are. Bai Zizong took the bottle and nodded happily. We'll go watch the city gate now. Don't worry. After saying that, the four of them left together. Yu Qianqiu returned to the Cultivation Alliance with a gloomy face. He went to his room and disappeared after closing the door. In Utopia's military camp, 3 companies of people in black clothes and masks were ready to go. On the stone platform, Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared. Guan Yu shouted, "Salute!" Swoosh! The hundreds of people below the platform clenched their right fists and placed them on their left chests. They lowered their heads slightly. Their movements were very orderly. Yu Qianqiu's gaze swept across the small silver medallion on everyone's chests. There was a serial number on it, and when it was forged, he had added a little of his own blood into it, allowing him to easily grasp everyone's location. After a while, Yu Qianqiu nodded. Guan Yu shouted again, "End of ceremony." With a swoosh, everyone returned to their original state. Not a single one of them spoke. They just stood there silently, waiting for their orders. Yu Qianqiu also didn't say a word. He quietly stood on the stone platform with his eyes closed. Guan Yu looked at him in surprise. His lips moved. He wanted to ask what they were doing, but his gaze swept past his subordinates who didn't say a word. He held himself back. Thus, everyone stood there without saying a word. The scene was extremely strange. Chapter 171. At the exit of the 100 Flowers Valley, Bai Zizong and the other 3 found a table by the window in a tea house and sat down. The 4 of them chatted and drank tea while waiting. After more than 4 hours, Tan Fei suddenly put down the teacup in his hand and gestured to the window with his lips. The 4 of them casually turned their heads to look. A group of people wearing Ong Guangsung clothes passed by the window and walked towards the city gate. At the front were 6 old men walking side by side, followed by a man and a woman. The man's face was gloomy, and there were scars on his face from being beaten. The woman was extraordinarily beautiful, and there was no expression on her face. Her figure was even more curvaceous. The man and woman were Lu Zhenguang and Chu Ping'er. The 10 people behind them were old and young. Jing's was stuck out his tongue and laughed softly. This Ong Kwangsung seems to be afraid of Yu Qianqiu. He actually needs so many people to escort him back. Bai Zitsong shook his head. It's not that Yu Qianqiu scared them. Ong Kwangsung knows that Lu Zhenguang fought with the disciples of Fuxian Island, and is afraid that they will take revenge. That's why he sent so many people to escort him back. Otherwise, a core formation cultivator like Yu Qianqiu wouldn't make them do this. Jingzhou laughed. The dignified Fuxian Island shouldn't be so narrow-minded, right? They are really gauging the heart of a gentleman with their own mean measure. Tsk. Other than that Lu Zhenguang and Chu Ping'er, I can't see through the cultivation of the others. Obviously, they are at least in the middle stage of core formation. The 6 elders in front are probably in the nascent soul stage. Tam Fei said. Wu Liqing frowned. What is Yu Qianqiu trying to do? With such a lineup, I'm afraid it won't be so easy to negotiate. Jingzhou smiled and said, I didn't expect the 4 of us to do something like stalking someone. Yu Qianqiu has quite a reputation. That goes without saying. He didn't even give face to the number 1 demonic sect, 10,000 demons Qiu Wu Yuan. Don't you think that's a big deal? Bai Zitsong said slowly. Don't say any more. They are about to leave the city. Let's follow them. Tan Fei suddenly said. They glanced at each other, and immediately got up to pay the bill, and left the tea house. When they left the 100 Flowers Valley, they saw that Ong Kwangsung and the others had already flown far away on a flying instrument. Bai Zitsong opened the lid of the porcelain bottle in his hand, and nodded at the 3 of them. The 4 of them rode on their swords, and chased after them at a moderate distance. In Utopia, Yu Qianqiu immediately felt the location of his blood essence moving quickly. He raised his eyebrows and opened his eyes abruptly. He said, Yinchang, get ready. I'll go out and take a look. When he reappeared, Yu Qianqiu appeared behind Bai Zitsong and the others on his sword. The 4 of them noticed the movement behind them and turned around. They were slightly shocked. When did he catch up? Yu Qianqiu accelerated to Bai Zitsong's side and flew side by side with the 4 of them. He turned his head and asked, What's going on? Bai Zitsong replied, There's a total of 18 people, and they're all on the flying magic tool in front. Aside from Lu Zhenguang and Chu Ping'er, there are 6 old men, who are probably at the nascent soul stage, and the other 10 should be at the middle stage of the core formation stage or above. What are you going to do? Yu Qianqiu didn't reply to him. He stared at the flying instrument in the distance, and narrowed his eyes. He contacted Guan Yu with his mind and said, Flying Pursuit Company 1, get ready. In Utopia, Guan Yu waved his hand and shouted, Flying Pursuit Company 1, get ready. With that order, the first team extended their right hand and placed it on the shoulder of the person in front, and the left hand on the shoulder of the person on the left. The entire Company 1 was linked together. Yu Qianqiu shrouded them with his divine sense. In an instant, the entire Company 1 appeared behind the 5 of them silently. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pointed at the flying instrument in the distance. He clenched his fist and made an encirclement gesture. The Company 1 commander at the back nodded and made the same gesture to the 2 platoon leaders beside him. He pointed at the flying instrument in the distance. Then, he extended his hands and made an encirclement gesture with his palms. The 2 platoon leaders nodded and waved their hands. They led the 2 teams to separate from each other and quickly chased after the flying instrument. The Company 1 commander led the remaining platoon and flew forward at high speed. Bai Zitsong and the other 3 saw Yu Qianqiu waving his hand and didn't know what he was going to do. Suddenly, they heard the sound of people flying at high speed from both sides. Before they could react, they saw a team of people dressed in black, with only their eyes exposed, overtaking the 5 of them. Just as they were stunned, another team of people dressed in the same clothes flew past them. Looking at their flying speed, there was no doubt that their cultivation was higher than the 5 of them. The 4 of them were shocked. Bai Zitsong was stunned. This is the power you deployed? Yu Qianqiu nodded. The people on the flying instrument were the people Ong Kwangsung had sent to pick up Lu Zhenguang. The sect master of Ong Kwangsung, Lu Chongqing, loved his grandson dearly. When he received the news that his grandson was beaten up by the people from Fuxian Island, he was angry but helpless. After all, Fuxian Island was too strong. Ong Kwangsung couldn't afford to offend them. For safety reasons, he specially ordered Elder Wu Boru and 5 other nascent soul stage elders to lead 10 core formation stage disciples to pick up Lu Zhenguang. As Lu Zhenguang's Dao partner, Chu Ping-er was his wife. She had no reason not to come and check on her husband being beaten up. The people on the flying instrument suddenly heard the sound of people flying at high speed from both sides. They looked to their left and right and saw 2 teams of people dressed as assassins, sandwiching the flying instrument in the middle. Wu Boru, who was leading the team, had a bad feeling. Although the flying instrument could carry a lot of people and was suitable for long-distance flight, it wasn't suitable for speed. If they were attacked in the air, it would be terrible. Ong Kwangsung had been fighting against the Devil Dao for many years, so he had trained his combat skills. Everyone pulled out their swords and faced their surroundings calmly. They didn't panic at all in the face of people who outnumbered them by several times. Wu Boru looked around, and his eyes fell on an open space in the forest. He waved his hand and pointed. He said in a deep voice, "Go down." An elder immediately controlled the flying Dharma artifact to rush down. Once it landed, everyone on it immediately jumped down, and the flying Dharma artifact was quickly put away. Everyone formed a circle, surrounding the sect master's grandson and Chu Ping-er in the middle. The 2 groups of black-clothed people in the air immediately followed and landed, jointly cutting off the retreat of the blue light sect people. The remaining gap was then closed by another group of black-clothed people that followed. At this point, Ong Kwangsung's people were surrounded. Wu Boru looked around and was secretly shocked. Among the black-clothed men, there were many whose cultivation levels even he couldn't see through. Furthermore, there were quite a few who were at the late core formation stage. If a fight broke out, his side would have no chance of survival. After calming down, Wu Boru immediately saw that the company commander was the leader of this group. He cupped his hands and said, "Who are you? Don't know why you've trapped my disciple Ong Kwangsung halfway? Could it be that I Ong Kwangsung have offended you?" The company commander, who only revealed his 2 eyes, looked at him coldly. He didn't say a word, nor did he order to attack. The group of men in black surrounded them, ready to attack at any time, but not yet. Seeing that the leader in black didn't speak, Wu Boru looked around and said with a slightly angry tone, "Friend, what do you want? If there's nothing else, please let us go." Haha. A laugh was heard. Yu Qianqiu, Bai Zizong, and the other 2 who arrived late landed on their swords. The men in black immediately made an opening. After the 5 of them entered, they immediately surrounded them again. Yu Qianqiu walked around and smiled. "Wu Boru, Elder Wu, long time no see. How have you been?" Bai Zizong and the other 3 were looking at these men in black, trying to figure out who they were. Wu Boru's expression froze. His chest heaved up and down as he sneered. "Yu Qianqiu, it's really you. You really didn't die. I'm standing right in front of you. Didn't you see it? Why, you must be disappointed that you didn't force me to my death back then, right?" Yu Qianqiu laughed. Lu Zhenguang, who was surrounded by Ong Kwangsung's disciples, couldn't take it anymore. He roared, "Yu Qianqiu, you've gone too far. I'm going to kill you." As he was about to rush out, he was held back by a few disciples. No matter how hard he struggled or shouted, they wouldn't let him go. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand lightly and pointed at him. "You don't know your place. What are you shouting for, you damn eunuch? Do you know the meaning of going too far? When I was in Ong Kwangsung, why didn't you touch your conscience and ask yourself if you were going too far? Let me tell you, I was the one who stripped you and castrated you in 100 Flowers House. How about that? Being a eunuch for so many years must feel great, right?" Everyone in Ong Kwangsung was stunned. Even Chu Ping-er, who didn't look at Yu Qianqiu directly, raised her head and looked at him. It was indeed possible. He was in 100 Flowers House when Lu Zhenguang got into trouble. When Lu Zhenguang heard that, he was so angry that his body trembled. He said, It's you? It's you. I'll kill you. Now that he finally knew the culprit who made him look like a man or a woman, it was easy to imagine how he felt. He roared and rushed out to take revenge, without any regard for his life. Hold him back. Wu Baru frowned and shouted. A few disciples held him back tightly. Now wasn't the time to be impulsive. Wu Baru looked around and said in a deep voice, I heard that you joined supporting Immortal Island. In that case, these people are all disciples of supporting Immortal Island. That's right. In the cultivation world, other than supporting Immortal Island, which other sect could transfer such a group of experts at any time? I really didn't expect this. The world's #1 sect, supporting Immortal Island, actually did such a thing to me, Ong Kwang Sung. It's really despicable. Supporting Immortal Island is nothing. A voice came from the top of a mountain. Everyone was shocked. Who is it? They didn't even put supporting Immortal Island in their eyes. Wu Baoru and the others were stunned for a moment, before they were pleasantly surprised. This person actually said such words. It was obvious that he wasn't on good terms with supporting Immortal Island. They didn't expect there to be a third party here. It might be a chance for Ong Kwangsung's disciples to survive. Which senior is here? I'm Ong Kwangsung Wu Baoru. I welcome senior to uphold justice. Wu Baoru cupped his hands towards the direction where the voice came from. Bai Zizong and the other three felt something was wrong. They looked at Yu Qianqiu at the same time. They saw the latter looking at Ong Kwangsung, and the others with a sneer. They couldn't help but look at the forest behind them. The sound of a horse's hooves came from the forest on the hillside. A silhouette riding on a horse was faintly seen walking down from the trees. A burly middle-aged man wearing a green robe and a green hat could be seen on his head. He had 3 strands of long beard on his face. His face was flushed and a pair of phoenix eyes looked imposing. He was riding his horse slowly towards the crowd. The mount he was sitting on was even more eye-catching. It had bright red fur, and its eyes shone with a demonic light. Especially its body. It was more than twice the size of a tall horse. Its chest and limbs were full of bulging muscles, making it look like a divine and extraordinary steed. Everyone had never seen such a big horse. Coupled with the person sitting on the horse, it was really shocking. What an imposing manner. This person was none other than Guan Yunchang. He rode his horse down, and the man in black took the initiative to make way for him to enter. From then on, those who didn't know his background finally knew that the person who came was also on Yu Qianqiu's side. Guan Yu sat upright on the horse, and glanced at Ong Kwangsung, and the others coldly. He said in a deep voice, Where are the people from Fuxian Island? Who was the one who asked me to uphold justice? Wu Baoru was completely speechless. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Guan Yu who was sitting high up beside him. He was very unhappy. He thought to himself, what did my sister teach this stupid horse to cultivate? Doesn't she know that this stupid horse can't get along with me? Damn it. He's all grown but he stole my limelight. Wu Baoru looked at Guan Yu from head to toe. He suddenly realized that although this person looked extraordinary, his cultivation base was the lowest among them. He couldn't help but sneer. I was wondering who came. So it's a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Guan Yu's red phoenix eyes widened slightly. He said proudly, You have a sharp tongue. You'll be crying later. As he spoke, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and asked, Boss, what are you going to do? Yu Qianqiu stared at Chu Ping, or who was in Ong Kwangsung's group, and said indifferently, You still haven't said anything. Don't you know why I'm here? Don't you want to give me an explanation? Ong Kwangsung and the others followed his gaze and realized that it was actually Chu Pinger. They couldn't help but look at each other. What did this have to do with her? Hearing that, Chu Pinger's body trembled. Her face turned pale in an instant. She raised her head miserably and shook her head with a bitter smile. You know everything now. Isn't that enough? What else do you want me to explain? Yu Qianqiu clenched his fists. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he opened his eyes and exhaled. The promise from back then. I want to know why. I want an explanation. Bai Zizong and the others exchanged glances. Yu Qianqiu was a good brother. Everything he said was true. Ong Kwangsung and the others' eyes flickered. They could vaguely guess what was going on. Bitch. You bitch. How dare you have an affair behind my back? Lu Zhenguang roared again. Although his body was restrained by his disciples, he could still move his legs. He immediately kicked Chu Ping'er's abdomen. Chu Ping'er grunted in pain. She was kicked to the ground. A few strands of her beautiful hair were messed up. She bit her lips and covered her abdomen with one hand. Then she slowly climbed up. Yu Qianqiu felt a heart-wrenching pain in his chest. He let out a voice that sounded like it came out from the depths of hell. He said coldly, "Wu Baoru, you better control that little bastard. If he dares to speak rudely or touch me again, I'll send all of you to meet the ancestors of Ong Kwangsung." Chapter 172. Wu Baoru's expression changed unpredictably when he was reprimanded in front of everyone. It alternated between white and red. He was obviously angry. However, the situation was stronger than the person. With a single order from the other party, he could really annihilate all of them. After hesitating for a while, he turned around and walked towards the restless Lu Zhenguang. It seemed that he really wanted to stop him. "Martial Ancestor Wu, ask them to let go of me. Ask them to let go of me. I want to kill this adulterous couple. I want to kill this adulterous couple." Lu Zhenguang roared incessantly. Chu Ping'er stood not far away. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her silver teeth were still stubbornly biting down on her red lips. Traces of blood had already seeped out. Yu Qianqiu's expression also became increasingly gloomy. He narrowed his eyes at Lu Zhenguang, and his chilling intent was self-evident. "Zhenguang, shut up," Wu Baoru shouted. His figure suddenly flashed, and he quickly rushed to Chu Ping'er's side. His left hand grabbed her neck, and the long sword in his right hand was also placed on the neck of his left hand. It looked like he was going to slice Chu Ping'er's head off her neck. Chu Ping'er immediately felt that it was difficult to breathe. Her pretty face was slightly raised from being pinched. Finally, two sad tears rolled down from the corners of her eyes and dripped down her cheeks. Perhaps it was because she knew that she was about to die. Although her head was raised, she couldn't help but look at Yu Qianqiu with a pair of mournful eyes that were filled with deep regret. Anyone who saw that miserable pretty face would feel heartache. However, Yu Qianqiu was unbelievably calm, as if Chu Ping'er's life and death had nothing to do with him. He slowly raised his hand, rubbed his nose and stared at Wu Baoru. He asked emotionlessly, "Wu Baoru, what do you mean by this? Are you trying to use her to threaten me?" Wu Baoru used both his hands to control Chu Ping'er's life. He turned around and placed her in front of him. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and laughed evilly. "Little brat, this old man has eaten more salt than you have eaten rice. Don't play this trick in front of this old man. Since you're here for this girl, don't act like you don't care. Hurry up and tell them to get out of the way. Letting us go is the right way. Maybe if I'm happy, I'll let this girl go." When Lu Zhenguang heard this, he was unhappy and immediately shouted, "Grandmaster Wu, you can't let this bitch go. Kill this slut for me." "Shut up." Wu Baoru turned around and shouted fiercely. There was a look of exasperation on his face. Ever since this child's body became ill, it became harder and harder for him to control his temper. Even at a time like this, he was still acting on his emotions. After he finished scolding, he turned around and smiled evilly at Yu Qianqiu. "Yu Qianqiu, hurry up and tell them to get out of the way. My patience is limited." Yu Qianqiu had never been threatened like this before. He looked at Chu Ping'er, who was having difficulty breathing, and smiled indifferently. "Old fart, it's not your turn to bargain with me. Seeing that you and my master are from the same sect, I'll give you two choices based on our old friendship. 1, you kill her immediately, then I'll kill all of you. 2, you let her go and I'll let all of you go." Wu Baoru looked at Chu Ping'er. Naturally, he wouldn't dare to kill her. She was everyone's life-saving item now. After pondering for a moment, he shouted, "I choose the second option, but your words have no proof. How can we believe you?" Yu Qianqiu saw that Chu Ping'er's face was already turning green. The muscles on his face twitched. He raised a palm and said, "I swear, if you let Chu Ping'er go safely, I'll let all of you go. Otherwise, I'll be punished by the heavens. Wu Baoru, stop talking nonsense with me. I'll count to 3. If you're late, you'll all die." He turned around and said to Guan Yu, "I'll count to 3. If they still don't let her go, I won't spare a single one and kill them all. 1, 2. He immediately started counting, not giving the other party any time to prepare. "I agree," Wu Baru hurriedly shouted. He was really afraid that the other party would count to 3. He had no other choice. Yu Qianqiu didn't give them any time to think. Moreover, the other party had already made an oath. Cultivators' oaths would come true if they broke it. What was there to worry about? Wu Baru let go of his hand and pushed Chu Ping out of the crowd of Ong Kwangsung. The latter fell to the ground. At this moment, Bai Zitsong and Tan Fei nodded. The two of them dashed over and carried her back to Yu Qianqiu's side. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two of them with relief. "Yu Qianqiu, it's time to fulfill your oath," Wu Baru shouted. "Of course." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand at the black-clothed man diagonally across him and said, "Make way and let them leave." The black-clothed man obeyed the order and quickly made way. Ong Kwangsung and the rest were overjoyed. They held their swords and retreated cautiously towards the gap. Guan Yu sat on the red rabbit, watching Ong Kwangsung and the rest retreat. He was so angry that his face turned even redder. How could he not be angry when the hero army that he had trained so hard ended up like this in their first battle? Guan Yu said unwillingly, "Boss, are we just going to let them go like this?" Yu Qianqiu glanced at him and said leisurely, "I've already made an oath. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to break my oath and be punished by the heavens?" Humph. After saying that, he turned around and suddenly said, "I've made an oath. As for whether you guys have made an oath or not, I don't know. Anyway, this is not something I can control." Hearing this, the faces of Ong Kwangsung's disciples who had not completely retreated changed. Wu Baru was so angry that he scolded, "Yu Qianqiu, you scum! You will die a horrible death. Let's go." Ong Kwangsung and the rest immediately flew away on their swords with all their might. Guan Yu's eyes lit up. He chuckled and waved his hand, saying, "Don't leave a single one alive. Kill them all." The company commander received the order and pointed with his finger, shouting, "Battle formation, kill them all." The military order was as firm as a mountain. Dozens of nascent soul late-stage men in black took the lead and quickly chased after them. The rest of the men in black followed in an orderly manner. After the group of black shadows whizzed away, there were only a few people left. Guan Yu had always felt that Chu Ping looked familiar. At this moment, he remembered that it was the woman he met in 100 Flowers' house. He immediately smiled and said, "Red Rabbit, let's follow and see." The Red Rabbit was quite intelligent and could understand Guan Yu's words. It didn't need to control it much either. With a long hiss, its majestic body suddenly stood up, and its 2 front hooves scratched the air. Then, it suddenly put them down and took advantage of the momentum to rush in the direction of the black-clothed man. Its 4 black and shiny hooves flashed, setting off a gust of wind around everyone. By the time they reacted, the Red Rabbit's huge body had already carried Guan Yu dozens of meters away. It was really fast. Looking again, a horse carrying a person was running in the mountains, as if it was running on flat ground. Regardless of the steep mountain or the dangerous road, it only cared about running in a straight line. It ran faster and faster. Gradually, it turned into a black dot and disappeared. It seemed that nothing could stop it. Bai Zitsong and the other 3 looked at each other in shock. They thought to themselves, "What kind of horse is this? It actually had such a fast running speed." Even a cultivator, who had just reached the foundation establishment stage, couldn't fly as fast as it ran on the ground. Yu Qianqiu glanced at it and showed a look of disdain. In fact, he was also very envious of Guan Yu for having such a BMW. He had long wanted to take it for himself. He believed that it would be very cool to ride this guy for a few laps. However, this little beast was very vengeful. It always remembered that he had kicked it in the past. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't even let him get close to it, let alone ride it. He could only watch Guan Yu ride such a handsome guy around in Utopia. He could only be envious. Sigh, what a sin. Looking at Chu Ping, at the side, the crystal-clear tears on her pretty face kept sliding down her cheeks. However, she bit her lips hard to not cry out. Her lips were already bright red, obviously biting very hard. The big footprint left by Lu Zhenguang on the abdomen of her pure white clothes was still very obvious. Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth a few times, wanting to say something, but he didn't. He really didn't know what to say at the moment. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore. He exhaled and said, "The four of you help me look after it. I'll go take a look." When the four of them nodded, the long sword was unsheathed and bounced up, drawing an arc in the air, carrying him quickly. Although he could disappear for a short while, the man on the sword and the woman on the ground were both inexplicably sad and in pain. They could only fly quickly in the air, letting the strong wind continue to blow and tear their faces. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.